Investing just got better with Interactive Investor. In a world that costs more, you can now invest with us for less than $5 a month. Investor Essentials is our newest and lowest monthly subscription. For a flat fee of $4.99, you get an ISA, trading account, and access to more than 40,000 UK and international investments. And you can do it all on the go with our mobile app or on our website. We're already home to more than 400,000 investors. So why not join them and say hello to better investing with Interactive Investor?
On behalf of Oxford University Lightweight Rowing Club,
on behalf of Oxford University Women's Lightweight Rowing Club,
I challenge Cambridge University Boat Club
to an 8-oared race to be held over the championship course
on Monday the 20th of March 2023.
On behalf of Cambridge University Boat Club, I accept the challenge.
Hello everyone, welcome to Putney on this rather chilly Monday morning for the 2023 Lightweight Boat Races. My name is Robert Trahan Jones and it's my pleasure to welcome you here to this traditional encounter between the Oxford and Cambridge crews, kicking off with the women's race and then followed on an hour or so later by the men's race. The 4¼ mile course behind me between Putney and Mortlake has been the venue for so many thrilling encounters over the last many hundreds of years. The lightweight boat races have only joined the programme here on the Tideway in the last several years. Cambridge won both of these races last year, so we're looking forward to perhaps revenge for the Dark Blues on this occasion. I'm joined today by Olympic champion Grace Prendergast and Chairman of British Rowing Mark Davis, from whom you'll be hearing a lot more as the coverage proceeds. Grace, if I could perhaps kick off with you, because you raced over this course in the women's open weight race last year. What are the crews going to be thinking now as they face their last minute preparation for the lightweight race?
I'd say there'd be a real mixture of emotions going through right now. A lot of work has gone into getting to today, so there will be a sense of excitement that the day's finally here. Sometimes throughout the season it just feels like it's never going to come, and then that last bit really flies by. On top of that, there'll be a lot of nerves and sort of apprehension. As I said, you dedicate so much time and effort into this day that it's here, and they finally get to kind of show everyone the work that they've been doing. So I think there's definitely a sense of nerves that come with that.
Now, you faced start level pressure on so many occasions, World Championship finals, Olympic finals. Do you have any special tips for coping with that level of net pressure?
For me, it was just really important to not think ahead. Think about, literally, you sit there and I'm just like, oh, 3 strokes, the first 3 strokes, and then that sort of makes it seem a little bit less daunting. And then also, you've done this so many times. Yes, it's you want to perform on the day, but you have practiced this day in, day out. So, I mean, there's no reason why it should be any different than any other day. So enjoy that it's like finally the chance to, I don't know, have that final result, but you've done it before. It's no different than training.
Exactly. Mark, you coxed this course. You coxed Cambridge reserve crew Goldie a little while ago.
A long time ago now, yeah.
What are the pressures from a cox's point of view over this 4¼ mile course?
Well, it'll be tense for them this morning. Obviously, because the stream is so important, they'll want to get that bit right, and they'll want to be the cox that doesn't lose it for their crews. Ultimately, the cox is there to make sure the rowers get a clear run at it, but at the same time, over this course, they'll want to make sure that they get the best of the stream. So there is always that slight dilemma as to how hard you push. You want to make sure that you give your crew a clean run. The last thing you want is a clash and possibly a disqualification. Then you ruin all the hard work that's gone in. But you also don't want to row them out of it by putting them into slow water when the opposite crew is in quick water. That obviously is not something that you have in traditional 2,000 metre racing. You might find that there's a little bit of a difference between different lanes in 2,000 metre racing, but not the same as on this course.
Now, it's also easy to forget these are students, they're not professional athletes, but even as a student you put your life on hold to take part in this day, don't you?
Yeah, for some people this will be their Olympic final. This may well be the peak of their rowing career, and they have given up the last 6 to 8 months to dedicate their entire lives to this. They're trying to do it around their studies, but this will have been their focus. So it's just one race. It doesn't matter what else they've done in the run-up to this race. They'll have done various fixtures, they will have won or lost races, but none of those will matter once this result has come about. So if they win today, then they will feel that their year has been worth it, and if they lose, they will feel that their year has been not quite wasted, but they will wonder what they did. And it's not as if they can suddenly say, well, it's all right, I've got another World Cup or I've got another World Championships. It might be this is the only year that they're doing it. So they've put a lot on the line for this.
And it's that gladiatorial level of contest, isn't it, that we look so much forward to in these boat races. Okay, plenty of action still to come. Of course, a few minutes to go until the lightweight women's race, but a little earlier this morning we caught up with the toss for stations and had a chat with the presidents.
So what we'll do is Cambridge toss and Oxford call, okay?
Very heavy, so good luck.
It's very heavy. Okay, you toss and you call before it hits the man. Heads. And it is tails.
I think sorry.
Sorry.
Cambridge on Surrey.
I'm sorry.
I'm now with Katie Wellstead, who's the president of Oxford University Women's Lightweight Rowing Club. Katie, welcome.
Thank you.
Now you come into this race with a pretty strong squad.
Yes.
Tell us how your year's shaped up so far.
We've had a really good year. We raced at the Women's 8's Head a couple of weeks ago, had a cracking result out of that. We've got a large squad this year, and that's made it really competitive. And a really nice mix of returners and new people to bring some fresh enthusiasm as well.
And that's been your strength, hasn't it? Because looking at your crew list, there
Yes.
are a lot of returners from last year's losing crew.
Yes, absolutely. And it's safe to say we're hungry for some revenge.
Yes, and we talked, didn't we, about hunger, because hunger means two different things in lightweight rowing, doesn't it?
Yes, but we had no problems in the weigh-in. We're all set. We're good.
How has your year shaped up so far?
It's been really good, really competitive. There's a great mood in camp at the moment, so I'm just excited to see what we can deliver.
And so am I. Well done indeed.
Thanks.
I'm now with Daphne Martin, the lightweight women's captain of Cambridge University Women's Boat Club. Daphne, now, you're not in the blue boat this year. What's happened?
Well, I mean, we all knew it was going to be an incredibly competitive squad. It's my first year trialing with CUBC, and it was a very unique position insofar as no president had been elected from last year's squad. So I sort of stepped up to the plate, and I feel really, really proud and honored to be able to represent our 10-person squad. But obviously, the name of president doesn't necessarily mean that you deserve a spot in the boat. And due to injury and due to other aspects, that unfortunately wasn't the case. But I was really proud and happy to be able to race in the lightweight spare four, which beat Oxford yesterday.
Now, coming off the back of last year's win, the lightweight women's squad at Cambridge must be looking strong. How many did you have report for training back in September, October time?
So this year we actually ended up being quite a small squad. We started off with about 11, and we've cut down to 10. But I actually think that that's our greatest strength.
Cambridge have won the toss. They've chosen Surrey, which is the southerly station, and some would say the safer station. What does it mean for you, Grace?
Surrey is, I think, traditionally the preferred station. You have the slight outside bend on the first one, but then you come around and you get a very good inside corner. So if you can kind of hold off on that first part of the race and then you come into your advantage, it can kind of set you up for the rest of the race. But in saying that, it doesn't mean you've won or lost. We lost the coin toss last year and got the Middlesex side and still managed to win. So you can win from either side, but there's different advantages throughout the race you've just got to really capitalise on.
Mark, not a lot of land water coming down right now, so maybe we're looking for fast times, even record times here?
It's very still conditions, so there's not a lot of wind to contend with, and there won't be a great deal of rough water, so you never know in that regard. I also won from Middlesex. I used to prefer steering Middlesex, but it's important to note that over the course of the race, of course, the bends come out level, but if you get ahead, then you can take the other person's water. So it does make a difference. For a faster crew off the start, you can take advantage of Middlesex, but if you think you're going to get to the middle of the race, then having that big Hammersmith bend in your favour does make a great deal of difference.
Well, the person with the unenviable task of working out who's on the right station is, of course, the umpire. So let's hear from them. I'm now with Kath Finucane, who's going to be umpiring the lightweight women's boat race. Kath, welcome to Putney, a place you know pretty well over the years.
Yeah, over the years. I haven't raced here in the boat race, but I've raced here quite often on the head of the river in various boats and steered it backwards. So yes, I do know Putney quite well.
What are the trials and tribulations of this special S-shaped course? 4¼ miles, really anything can happen, can't it?
Yes, I think it's making sure that they're in the right, that the crews are in the right place, making sure the buoys are in the right place. And for this race, of course, there might be other crews out on the river, so there's lots of things to keep an eye out for. But to keep it safe and fair is the main thing.
You've raced the women's boat race at Henley. That
Yes.
was a little time ago.
It was.
What are the differences between the two courses?
Well, it was straight and downstream, so there wasn't much difficulty in steering it. Although I think we did clash blades in the middle at one point, even then, and it's shorter, so it was much shorter.
And blade clashing is one of the things that the crowds look forward to, isn't it? Because it lends that added frisson to any race. What are your options when that happens?
Well, options number one is disqualification of the crew that hit them, so that is always in our armoury, but you're always trying to see, is it making a big enough difference? But if a crew is stopped by it, then yes, you do have disqualification. I think it's nice to avoid blade clashing because it's nice to have a clean race which is dependent on the athleticism of the crews and the crews rather than who hits best. So I prefer a nice clean race.
I think we'd all go along with that.
Yeah.
I wish you a trouble-free race, Kath.
Great, thank you very much.
Well, of course, this race couldn't go ahead without the full support of our sponsors, Interactive Investor. So let's hear from their Chief Executive, Richard Wilson.
Hello, I'm Richard Wilson, Chief Executive of Interactive Investor. I'm delighted to be in our 4th year of our partnership with the Lightweight Boat Races. Throughout this period, it's continued to demonstrate the power of teamwork, hard work, and going the extra mile. I wish you every success on and off the water, and may the best team win. Good luck.
On the balcony here at London Marine Club for this year's 2023 Lightweight Women's Boat Race. We're still a few minutes off the start. We can see the stats so far, and you can see that in both the men's and the women's races, Cambridge lead the series overall, thanks in large part to some stunning runs of success that they recorded in the early years of these particular events, which were held over the Henley course. The men's race starting in 1974 and the lightweight women's race some 10 years later. That accounts for the numerical difference between the two series that we can see. Okay, so let's just have a look at the lineups for the two crews in the lightweight women's race. So starting with Oxford, their stroke and president, Katie Wellstead, that I had a chat with just a few minutes ago, 21 years old, third-year material science student from Stratford upon Avon. 2 previous appearances in the lightweight crew last year and in 2021. And in the 7 seat we've got Indigo Buckler, 23 years old. So a local student from based in London. Claim to fame, went to the same school as Dina Asher Smith and Emma Raducanu. So obviously elite athleticism runs in that particular academic institution. And behind her in the 6th seat we've got Rosie Lynch, one of the 2 medics in the Oxford crew. Attends Green Templeton College, and she rode in the reserve crew Tessis last year, and she's looking forward to full qualification in medicine later in the summer. In the 5 seat, Jojo Blythe out of Wadham College. Now she learned to row at Hinksey Sculling School in Oxford when she was 10 years old. Another veteran from last year's losing Oxford crew, come back for a degree of revenge. In the 4 seat, Molly Cresser Rogers, hometown Carmarthen, a fluent Welsh speaker. She attended school at Ysgol Bro Myrddin, and she is fluent in Welsh, and she's reading mathematics and philosophy in her 2nd year at Jesus College. In the 3 seat we've got Abby Robinson, 23 years old. In the reserve crew last year, many many bumps in Cambridge. She was put down in her bio notes, and despite being the tallest athlete in the entire crew, she also claims to have the smallest feet. Behind her in the 2 seat, Rosie Thorogood, one of the younger members of the crew, 20 years old, a chemist in her 3rd year, again a local girl, attended Putney High School. Her home is just down the road from us here in Barnes, and she has had 2 previous appearances in the Blue Boat last year and in 2021. And because of her short height, just 1 meter 55, on one occasion they give her 3 seat pads to prop her up in the boat. And Catherine Ferris completing the crew in the bow seat, 25 years old, 3rd year DPhil in oncology, and she was in the reserve crew 5 years ago, so marking a reappearance here in her postgraduate year. And their cox is Victoria Fletcher, dual nationality, British and Polish, attended St Paul's Girls' School, and a number of appearances here on the tideway between Putney and Mortlake, because of course that's where St Paul's boats, so she'll be highly experienced, and that degree of proficiency in steering the tideway course is no doubt hoping to give her a little bit of an edge here over this 4¼ mile course. So we can now look to Cambridge. The lineup begins with Liv Elliott in the stroke seat, 29 years old. She's a PhD in medical sciences from York, and she was in the Cambridge crew 2 years ago and was the lightweight women's president on that occasion, so back in the Blue Boat. In the 7 seat we've got Lauren Britton, 22 years old, from Magdalen, women's captain for Magdalen last year. And she's studying veterinary medicine, and she was able to complete lambing during night shifts as part of her training for this year's boat race. In the 6th seat, Livia Lisi Vega, 24 years old, reading for a PhD in cancer biology, a Spanish national from the city of Cáceres in Spain, rows for Downing College Boat Club. And then in the 5 seat, Katie Hempson, another medic from Christ College, hometown Preston in Lancashire, and she's previously competed for Cambridge both in cross country and triathlon, so a multi-talented athlete there in the 5 seat. At 4 we've got Gemma Swan, 25-year-old student in nanotechnology and nanoscience from County Durham, who one of the many students in this year's boat race who noviced at her college when she arrived last year. At 3 we've got Madeline Jackson, another medic from St Edmund's College, learnt her rowing at Walton Rowing Club just upstream here, and in fact won many junior national medals with Walton Rowing Club. In the 2 seat we've got Beth Merrifield, another vet from Gosport in Hampshire, based out of Homerton College, and she's been last year's women's captain for her college. And the lineup complete by Annabelle Cardno in the bow seat, studying for a PhD in pharmacology from Emmanuel College, and hails from Newcastle upon Tyne. And in fact, she rowed for a college for 3 years and then spent a year with one of the town clubs before trialling for the lightweight crew. And here's their cox, Sam Clark, 25 years old, a PhD chemist from Radstock in North Somerset, and again a multi-talented athlete because he's boxed with Oxford University Boat Club during his undergraduate career in that particular city. So that completes the 2 crews for this year's lightweight women's boat race, going to get underway in just a few minutes' time. Grace, conditions on the tideway remarkably benign, but I guess the tide hasn't really begun to run just yet.
No, it's all looking very calm and very appealing at the moment, but I think the beauty of the tideway is you actually just don't know how much it's going to change, and as the tide swings round and the wind may or may not pick up, you can't guarantee that it's going to be this nice the whole way down the course.
Yes, and as the tide gathers pace, you can see in our shot now that the water is barely making a ripple up against the piers of Putney Bridge, and when the tide is really running, either on the ebb or the flood, it really does pile up against that stonework, doesn't it?
It really does, and it's probably ideal at the moment because they're doing a free start. They don't have the stake boats there to hold them, so the less tide is probably going to play into the marshals' favour at the start to hopefully get them away nice and even and no one get an advantage or a disadvantage right from the go.
Well, Catherine Oaken, when she gave them their briefing, we can see the Oxford cox's hand raised there. Victoria Fletcher, she's got her hand, well, both coxes have got their hand raised to indicate that they are not yet ready, because they realise that Catherine Oaken is going to get the cruise underway as soon as she sees that they are both level. We've got an aligner on the shore to indicate to the umpire with flags when they believe that the bows of the 2 crews are level. And once we see the cox's hands drop, then it will be entirely in the hands of the umpire, and hopefully we'll see this race quickly get underway.
Yeah, it's a really tense part of the race when you're focusing in your boat, you're not looking out, so you don't know when the opposing coxswains put their hands down. So you're sort of sitting there really, really on edge, really ready to go, but it might be a minute, it might be 5 seconds, it feels like an eternity, but the boats are looking relatively level, but we've still got one hand up.
Yeah, you made the point about not noticing when the other cox has got their hand raised, because everybody keeps their eyes in the boat, concentrating on exactly what you're doing and the way you're doing. And we are underway. The 2023 Lightweight Women's Boat Race has got off to a good, clean start. Both crews powering away off the start. We'll get some rates in a minute, but it looks as though Oxford have already gained a slight advantage at this early stage, Grace.
Yeah, it looks like they really jumped out initially, and the crews they've got a good distance between them. There's definitely no chances of clashing here, which I'm sure the umpires will be pleased about, but there is a lot of separation, so I'm sure they'll start to come together a little bit more to both stay in that fast stream. But I think Oxford had a good start, but it may be looking like Cambridge is now getting on a good rhythm and sort of minimising the little jump that Oxford got.
Yeah, Oxford went off at 40 strokes a minute. Cambridge went off a slightly lower rate, 38 strokes a minute. But as you said, Grace, they really are gathering momentum now. And as they come past the line of boathouses that cut across the embankment here, it's been the homeland of rowing for hundreds of years here at Putney. It is in fact the light blues who've drawn back into a slight advantage.
Yeah, and it looks like the Cambridge women have really tried to go out fast and been on that slightly outside bend for the first turn. You don't want to get caught behind then, because you know once you've come around that one, the Cambridge crew is going to have the next advantage. So you don't want to let Oxford make the most of that and then cut across. But Cambridge have just seemed to push on to a very, very fast rhythm and just seem to be powering away literally with every single stroke. So it's an impressive start from them.
It is indeed, and they've kept their rate up at 38. It's a good, solid rhythm. And Oxford, for their part, well, they've already fallen off the pace a little. They've dropped their rate. Obviously, they weren't going to keep it up at 40. They're down to 36s as they come round the inside of the bend that is marked by that huge new development at Fulham Football Ground to the right of your picture here, as the bend begins to swing round, in theory, in favour of Oxford. Now, can they capitalise on that advantage, which is supposed to be worth a third of a length, isn't it, to the crew on the inside of the bend?
Yeah, it is, and this is going to be a really important stage for Oxford. They can't let Cambridge keep walking away, because then it's going to be a hard race when you can't see the other crew that you're racing, and when it's one-on-one racing, you need to race to the other crew, and the Cambridge women have really, really jumped out. And
now, just in case you're confused, we are not in fact looking at the lightweight women's boat race. On our camera shot at the moment, we've picked up another two crews who I think out of Thames Rowing Club, who are simply here for an outing. So perhaps, yes, now we are back on track with the with the lightweight women's boat race, and you can see the look of sheer grit and determination on the Cambridge Strokes face. Liv Elliott really driving her crew on here, keeping the power on as they head up towards the mile, Grace.
Yeah, and Liv Elliott has experience of being in the blue boat before, so I think having her up leading the crew is a real advantage, and you can see she's not giving up, and she's determined to make sure their crew keeps walking away. And I think they'll be really confident. It is a very different crew than last year, but last year they managed to get an outstanding, I think it was a 15 boat victory. So it seems like the Cambridge lightweight women are on a real high at the moment, and wanting to continue on that tradition and make sure they keep up that. But Oxford, I think they need to really dig in here and know that you don't know how hard the other crew's gone out. Maybe Cambridge has gone out too hard, and the more pressure they can keep on, and if they can just hang in there and make it really hard for Cambridge, you don't know what's going to happen in the second half of the race.
Moving strongly upstream towards the mile, the first intermediate timing signal on the Surrey shore, and you can see now that Cambridge really do have more than a length advantage. But of course, Cambridge, having come into this race off the back of that substantial win in last year's lightweight women's boat race. And Grace, when you come into an encounter like this, even though it's a new crew, the fact that you're coming in as the reigning champions, that really does give the whole squad quite a spur on, doesn't it?
It really does, and it gives you so much confidence in your program, and you know that if you're doing similar things to the crew last year, it's going to set you up for the potential to have a similar sort of race. And they, I'm sure, would have been chatting to the girls in the crew last year and getting advice from them and drawing on them and similar coaching team as well. So it gives you a lot of evidence to prove that yes, I can do this, and yes, we are capable of winning.
Well, Cambridge has finally been able to drop the rate a little. I got them down at 35 strokes a minute. Oxford also at 35, but the Dark Blues really going to have to dig deep, aren't they, Grace, as we come past the mile here, because in a minute the stations are going to favour Cambridge around the inside of the big Surrey bend that has been a decisive factor in so many boat races over the years.
It really has been, and yeah, as you say, I think the Oxford women are really going to have to dig deep here, because once you have a lead like Cambridge has, it's very motivating to be able to sit out in front, see your competition. All 8 rowers can sit there and see if Oxford's making a move, and they can just hold and respond. Whereas Oxford has to go through the point now where the coxswain has to try and motivate their crew to keep pushing, and give them information about how far behind they are and all that, which is, it's a tough position to cox from, but it's now's the time that they've really got to dig in to make sure they don't keep sort of falling behind.
It's a really fine line, isn't it, for an experienced cox, because on the one hand they want to give their crew a realistic picture of exactly what's happening so that the crew know how to respond appropriately, but on the other hand they don't want to discourage the crew for them to lose heart if they think the others are so far ahead. So it really is a fine line they have to tread.
It's a very fine line, and I know as a rower you definitely can sense when your coxswain's potentially not being quite truthful, and if they're saying yes we're moving and I'm never seeing the next crew, it's a little bit, you can start to get frustrated and heads can start going out of the boat, so the coxswain has to be very clear about how far behind they are so the rowers feel like they don't want to have to turn around and take a look for themselves, which is only going to slow them down. But when you're getting a bit frustrated and you're tired and fatigued, bad little habits like that can creep in. But here they're starting to really round that bend, and the Oxford women will be starting to feel the Cambridge puddles on their blades, which is an added thing to balance and make sure you're not getting caught in that dirty water.
Well, we're coming up to the 8-minute margin as the crews approach Hammersmith Bridge. Hammersmith, that's been such a familiar landmark on the boat race course since it was first constructed in the early part of the 19th century. Closed to traffic, of course, because of safety reasons. There's a very expensive exercise being now undertaken to try and establish what remedial work needs to occur to rebuild and strengthen this historic structure. But now shooting the bridge, it is Cambridge with about a length of clear water, so at least 2 lengths advantage over Oxford, who really are going to have to pull something big out of the hat. Now, although many spectators look at the boat race and say, hey, the crew that gets in front first always goes on to win. That is by no means the case. And in at least a third of boat races, in fact, the crew that is down at Hammersmith has gone on to win. So it is doable. But Oxford, they have left themselves a mountain to climb, haven't they, Grace?
Yeah, it's definitely doable, and especially on a body of water like the Tideway on the Thames. To be fair, it is relatively flat today, so there's probably not going to be too many obstacles to overcome, but you can't rule out anything happening, and as people get tired, mistakes happen, so Oxford needs to make sure they stay in it in case anything like that happens. And also, the more relentless they are, the less comfortable the Cambridge crew can feel. So if they can hang in there and start to put pressure on them, they might cause little mistakes to occur, and they really need to make the most of this middle portion of the race, because you can't leave this to the last little bit when it's sort of a margin like this.
Well, we're about to move through the halfway point. I don't know if we'll get a shot of it. Yes, there we are in St Paul's School there. You can see their slipway coming down to the water's edge there from their boathouse, and St Paul's, who recently erected a black and white pillar to indicate the halfway mark on the 4-mile, 385-yard Tideway course that has been such a familiar venue for rowing races, both professional and amateur, for the last many hundreds of years. No time for sightseeing though in these 2 lightweight women's crews, and Cambridge really are now extending their lead over Oxford, and Cambridge have maintained that rhythm. We saw them get into that early set, the 2 crews matching each other stroke for stroke at 35s, but yeah, as is so often the case, Grace, when a crew gets out in front, you can just see the opposition behind you, and you've got that confidence, haven't you, to move it on.
You really do, and they're both rating the same, but it looks like potentially Cambridge is getting a little bit more length each stroke, which is going to be propelling them further every stroke if they're doing the same amount of strokes per minute. So they're looking very long and connected, and that they get a good lever and swing through, and that's going to pay off, especially in a long distance race, and it's a long way out there. You're settling in for about 20 minutes, so you want to be more efficient, you want to be getting more and more out of every stroke, but they're doing it well, and as we talked about, sitting out in front, you've got that opportunity to just kind of breathe, to be confident, to know where your opposition are and row your own rhythm, whereas it's very easy if you can't see anyone to feel a bit chasey and feel a bit panicked.
And you can see Oxford there in shot now. The stroke getting a little bit ragged. They haven't quite got the same cohesion that they did in the early stages of the race, because this is when things really begins to hurt for both crews. This is a long old race. It is 3 times as long as the international standard 2,000 metre race. Grace, you've been able to race over both those distances. How does it feel when you get to this stage?
The stage is, you're in a bit of no man's land. You're far enough away from the start that you're pretty tired, but you're also far enough away from the finish that you can't really see that the finish is anywhere near or in sight. So this is where you really need to dig deep, and I think for us it was all about staying present. You can't think about what's still left to go because it's a very tiring thought, and you can see for them as you start to round this bend, as often when you might start to get a bit of a headwind or the water's starting to like chop up a little bit, which is difficult when you're starting to get tired and then you have that to deal with. But the middle section of a long distance race is it's tough, and it seems to take forever, and then you kind of get to a point where you're like, okay, I can see the other side now. But at the moment both crews will be hurting. The Cambridge women will be as well, even though they're out in front. The pain will well and truly be setting in.
Looking down on the race just there from our drone shot, you could see Chiswick-Gate, the island, the only island on the boat race course, over to the right, and both crews now clear of that, moving upstream past the next intermediate timing point at Chiswick Steps. 13.5 minutes into this race. I don't think we're going to see any records broken in this particular encounter, because of course this is only the 3rd time that the lightweight women's race has been rowed over the Putney to Mortlake course, after moving from the Henley Regatta course, where it had been rowed every year since its initiation in 1984. And you can see that the cohesion that Cambridge have applied throughout this race is still hanging in there. When you're in front, as we heard earlier from Grace, it gives you that confidence. You can match any move that the losing crew may make with a push of your own, because Cambridge, having established this considerable advantage of being able to drop the rate down to 33 strokes a minute, they've kept that rhythm and continue to look pretty dominant. For their part, well, Oxford really trying to drive it on. Katie Wellstead, their president, when she I was talking to a little earlier on, she was talking about the hunger that her crew feel after that defeat last year. So many of them have come back to try and wreak revenge, but I don't think it's going to be their year. Moving past Chiswick Pier to the right of your shot now, and the Hammersmith Bend is beginning to even out as we come to the point of on the course known as the crossing, when once again we begin another swing back on the Middlesex side. But as the leading crew, Grace, well, Cambridge can pick and choose exactly where they go on this river now, can't they?
Yeah, they can. So they've done enough work early on to counteract what would have been Oxford's advantage here. So they have raced a race where they've been able to take the inside bend on essentially every bend, which is really paid to their favour. And you can see the rate starting to fall slightly. I think that might be indicative of what looks like a little bit of a headwind building, and when you're out in front you can sort of drive it out and make sure you're not starting to spin as you get tired, and Cambridge has the luxury of being able to do that and make sure they're still rowing in efficient rhythm.
Now, of course, in a lightweight race, all 16 athletes in the two boats, in theory, wave roughly the same, and so that the advantage of weight, of muscle mass that prevails in open weight races, you don't have that particular factor to take into account. So actually the speed of the boat is all about technical proficiency. It's about doing exactly the same thing at exactly the same time, which is the hallmark of our sport, isn't it? And it's that technical proficiency that Cambridge have reflected in strong measure here in this race that has really given them the clear advantage.
It really is, and with that rate cap, I think we're seeing the Oxford crews again. Looks like the blue boat and potentially the second boat. But when you've got the same weight advantage, essentially you're on an even playing field. But in saying that, you will have athletes in these crews that sit naturally in that weight, and you will have athletes in these crews that have to try a bit harder to get underweight. So there are different cases and different scenarios which means everyone has to approach the race day a little bit differently. And I'm sure when everyone weighed in this morning, it was a sigh of relief, and you can turn away from that and start to think about the race. But yeah, lightweight rowing's tough. Don't know if I could do it.
So all 16 of them weighed in much earlier this morning, inside the magic threshold of 59 kilos per athlete. That is the rule that makes it slightly different from the international rules. There's no crew average requirement, so everybody less than 59k. But coming back onto that very important point you made about the difficulty or not of making that threshold, I think that both universities, and in fact lightweight rowing as a particular specialty, has learned a great deal over the years, and so that when athletes report for potential selection right at the start of the process, then most squads will have finely honed assessment programs to try and determine whether in fact it is physically possible for those athletes to make the weight.
Yeah, which is really important, because as rowers you do a lot of training, and you almost just taught to eat everything in sight essentially. So you want to make sure that these athletes can fuel really well and make the weight. So it's finding that real balance. But then in saying that, I know internationally you also want to be on the cusp of the weight, so you're not sitting there racing people that are in a different league to you because you're well under. But it's a fine line, and I'm sure with all the training they do, it's still very, very important to fuel and get all that in. But yeah, it's a real art, and it almost turns into like a bit of a science.
Well, Barnes Bridge is now well in sight. Cambridge about to pass under the centre arch, as the rules of the boat race demand, to be followed by Oxford. Now, we were talking about the leading crew at particular points. It is extremely uncommon for the crew that is down at this particular point to go on to win the race, and I think that's what we're going to see here, because Oxford really have a considerable disadvantage now. I think you can think of only a couple of occasions in the last 50 years when the crew that's been down at this point has gone on to win the race. You can see the river move round in favour of the crew on Middlesex now. The houses on the south shore at Barnes, in the rather wooded country. But all too soon the finish line just below Chiswick Bridge will come into sight for the Cambridge crew, and their cocks will be able to tell the crew that the finish is in sight. There's the tall chimney of what was once the Mortlake Brewery, where, sad to say, beer is no longer brewed. It's now been turned into a whole series of office spaces, but as a structure it's been a familiar sight on the boat race course for very many years. A little bit of a spirited finish, I think, now being put in by Oxford, Grace.
Yeah, interestingly enough, the crews are still taking quite different lines. The Oxford crew is sort of hugging the bank a little bit more, whereas Cambridge is sitting out in the middle. And I know for me personally, this was always a very challenging part of the race. You are so tired, and you know the end's coming, but you're on a constant bend. And as a rower, you can actually really feel that when your coxswain is taking a turn, and it's quite uncomfortable. So now is a time where both crews will really have to make sure that they fight the fatigue and make sure they don't let any little mistakes fall in as you're at this challenging part of the race, because it's when your mind can kind of start to wander and you can start to think about the finish line, but you've got to stay in the moment, stay in every stroke you're doing, because you'd hate for anything to happen this close to the line.
And I think for those spectators who haven't rowed, that's a really important point, because it's one of those sports that when it's done well, it looks so easy. But the slightest mistake, if the concentration falters after this arduous slog, I mean, we've been going on for some 22 minutes now. That is a long old way, and just the slightest falter, we could have, in looking at a disaster, we could have a boat stopping crab unless the concentration stays there, couldn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And they've been going for 22 minutes, and I can guarantee probably 2.5 minutes into the race they were not sure if they were going to make the finish line. They would have been on the edge of fatigue. So you have to sit in that level of pain for a very long time, and this is when you can sort of relish in the fact that it is getting there, but you're still in that immense level of pain, and don't envy them at all at the moment. But I think the Cambridge crew will be having a little bit more of a enjoyable time sitting out in front, and it's a bit easier to cope with the pain when you can see your opposition behind you.
Oxford taking the rate up to 35. They really are throwing everything at it. They've narrowed the gap a little, but the dominant lead from the light blues has allowed them to see off the Oxford opposition. Cambridge now at 33 strokes a minute as we now power up towards the finish line. Very few strokes left. The Cambridge cock, Sam Clark, will be urging his crew on to those final few strokes, holding it together as we've been talking about throughout the second half of this race. And suddenly the heads are beginning to sit up stronger, confident. They know that they are just a few strokes away from victory. There it goes, the finish post of the 2023 lightweight women's boat race, and victory once again goes to Cambridge.
Yeah, very impressive performance, and you can see the joy and the celebration starting to happen. It's this moment when you're like, wow, it was all worth it, and they just dominated. They just got out and then kept edging out, and it's such a nice sight to see people this excited and happy.
Yeah, well, standing up at the finish of a race is a common sight, isn't it? I think that's the first time I've ever seen the Cox and Stroke both stand up in the boat together and exchange a hug. Great sight. Yeah,
I think it's brave to stand up after doing all that rowing. You want to make sure your legs are able to cope with that, but the joy that these women and the Cox and Sam will be feeling right now is second to none, and it's a lot of time and effort and dedication, and they are now able to sort of sit in it and know that all their hard work has really, really paid off.
Yes, I can remember one particular World Championship final. It was the lightweight men's fours back in 2010, and the three medalists crossed the line within 0.6 of a second of each other, and it really was a humdinger from the word go. And it was Great Britain who won the gold on that occasion, and one of the guys stood up in the boat afterwards, just as we've seen the Cambridge Stroke do, and he came under quite a bit of criticism afterwards, because everybody said no, he couldn't have been pulling hard enough if he still had the strength to stand up just a moment later. But I don't know, the endorphins kick in hard, don't they?
Yeah, I think once you cross a line, and if you're celebrating, and if you've got the result you want, for some reason the pain just disappears. Whereas unfortunately, if you cross and you're disappointed, the pain really sits there, and all those emotions come in, and I'm sure that's what Oxford might be feeling at the moment. But it's impressive from both crews to get to the start line, the amount of time that these Oxford women would have dedicated, and the amount they would have learnt from this race is, obviously it's probably hard for them to take in now, but it will help them in the future.
Well, as is so often the case in a boat race, the winning crew look as though they could do it all over again, and the losing crew, well, they look as though they'd rather be elsewhere right now.
Yeah, exactly. And the Cambridge women are getting a very nice, joyous welcome into the bank, and it's great for the whole squad. Obviously there are eight people rowing and one coxswain, but there are the people that have missed out on this crew that put in just as much effort and have dedicated just as much time, and it's a win for everybody, and the coaches, the supporters, the support staff. So much goes into getting this crew to the start line, and it's a nice moment for the entire team, and also for the blue boats that are going to be racing next week. It gives them confidence that the program's going well, and look at what our team can do, and we'll take confidence from that.
Yes, and that's important in any sport, isn't it? That the team, the crew, the individual athlete that actually appears on the start line, they are the tip, aren't they, of the pyramid. And in any well-structured sport, there's a massive base of operations to get those athletes to where they are, to what they hope is going to be a winning position.
Yeah, exactly. And I think from my experience of doing the Cambridge and Oxford boat race, it's the tradition and the years that come before you as well. There'll be rowers that have raced this race for past years that it brings them so much joy, and they get to watch everyone experience and have this moment like they got to, and it's really special for everyone involved in the whole system, and the supporters. Like, there would be parents sitting here that have watched these athletes train all hours of the day and day in, day out, and it's nice to have this moment and get to really enjoy it.
And you mentioned the parents, and of course the other important factor, particularly for the lightweights, more so I would guess than the open weights, is that the Bank of Mum and Dad has a big part to play in supporting these young athletes in their sporting endeavours, doesn't it?
It really does, and you can't get here without that support and that help, and it's a relentless sport, and you need a lot of resources and a lot of time and effort, and coaches and boats and oars and driving, and there's so much you need help with, and you can't do it alone. So I think there'll be some very, very grateful athletes right now, and they'll be able to go and thank them and enjoy this moment with their supporters.
Well, in a few moments' time, hopefully, we'll be able to have a word with a few of the athletes who've taken part in this lightweight women's race. But the congratulations continue for Cambridge, and commiserations there in the background for the losing Oxford crew. On the foreshore at Quintin Boat Club, which is traditionally the disembarkation point for all the winning and losing crews of boat race competitors over the years.
Yeah, this is a really tough time after a race when you've got one crew that's so happy and one crew that's feeling a bit disappointed. But I think after you have some time to process and take things away, they were like the Oxford women have so much to be proud of, and the time and effort they've put into the season is probably very similar to the Cambridge women, and have just come out on the other side of it. And I think that's what's so special about one-on-one racing, is the fact that you do really feel like you have a winner and a loser, as opposed to a first and a second. But once I think the emotions sort of settle and the fatigue leaves, they'll have so much to be proud of, and would have had a really enjoyable season.
Okay, well, I think we can now go over to Mark Davis, and he's on the foreshore at Quintin and able to talk to some of the competitors.
Well, I'm here, Robert, with the victorious Cambridge Cox. His crew is arriving slowly, but trying to get them to come and talk to us, as they've been greeted off the water by a gaggle of very excited Cambridge supporters has been something of a struggle. But Sam Clark, your crew made pretty light work of that.
Absolutely not. I'm sure it was very, very hard work for them.
Well, they made it look easy.
Oh, they always do. I'm always just amazed by how easy they can make such incredibly difficult things look. But they've shown that day better than they ever have before. It was something quite spectacular.
I mean, you were off, apart from the first couple of strokes where Oxford got off to a very quick start off the go, you were up basically from the very start and you just rode away the entire length of the course.
I think we knew that Oxford would have a very feisty start. We know that they are a really powerful crew, they're some superb sportswomen, and so we knew that we would have to push hard if we wanted to stay with them at that point in the race, and I'm just really glad that we were able to hold them off.
Were you aware of how far ahead you were during the course of the race? Was Liv saying to you how they were dropping back, or were you still urging your crew on, thinking that they were quite close to you?
I had no idea. I'll be honest, I had no idea. I don't know what the margin was, but I thought it was. We just wanted the best time and the best row that we could have as a boat.
Everything went to plan then?
Oh, I would say so. I'd say
exactly
so.
That. Liv, you're the lightweight president. What have you got? No, you're not.
I was the 2021.
Oh, 21 lightweight president. I beg your pardon. So,
still here.
So this is a fourth win in the race for Cambridge Women's Lightweights.
Yeah,
right? Taking the leads from 23-17 in the overall scheme of the race. So how did this one compare with your other races?
I mean, they can't be compared. Each race is just so special and unique and such a special journey that, yeah, I couldn't possibly compare them.
And you weren't saying to Sam, look, I can see them dropping back, can we ease off a little bit here?
No, our goal was to go out, enjoy and do our best row, and we've just really enjoyed going hard. So that's what we wanted to do.
Fantastic. Well done. Many congratulations. Lauren, I gather you've been training by lambing.
Beth and I are fourth year vet students.
So obviously maybe that should be built into every training programme from here on.
Yeah, well actually, do you know what? I think credit goes to the club and this squad for making it work. We have so many people here that do insane academic, crazy commitments off the water, and we just are fully committed to each other and making it work and supporting one another.
At what point in this race did you think, okay, we've won it?
Not until the end. You have not won until you cross the line. And like Liv said, I mean, this season for us has been built on trusting our row and each other and just wanting our best race. So that didn't happen until we crossed the line, and we just went for it every stroke.
Well done. Livia, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to say one very important thing, which I think almost like all of my crewmates also think, is that we all come from college, and I just wanted to take a minute to thank all of my college friends and the boat clubs that basically supported us and I don't know, really encouraged us to trial, and yeah, I just would like to mention that.
Fantastic. You're from Spain?
Yes, I am.
How big is this event at home? How much are people watching what you're doing?
I'd say it's variable. Some people are really aware of it, and yeah, certainly where I come from is still quite new, so but I still have people watching, so
very good.
Yeah.
Many congratulations. Katie, you've had Cambridge success in the past in different sports.
Yeah, so I did rowing, I took a few breaks, I did a couple of different sports, so I was part of the cross country team and the triathlon team, so I've represented Cambridge in a couple of different sports, but very special to do it for rowing.
How does this compare?
You can't compare. The squad is just incredible. I've never made such close friends, such teammates. I mean, we see far too much of each other. We train twice a day. We've lived together the past week. It's just incredible, and I just want to thank everyone in the squad and everyone in the wider squads, the open weights and the coaches and the spares. We're one club, and it's just an absolute incredible experience to do with everyone.
Gemma, tell us what it's like to have all those other crews. Being one club at Cambridge is a very different setup to the Oxford setup. Do you think that makes a big difference to you?
Oh yeah, massively. I think we learn so much from each other. We learn so much from the experience that we have in the other crews, and we really just help push each other on. I think we couldn't achieve what we achieved today without the support of the other clubs. So.
Was there ever a point in this race that you thought to yourself, well, okay, we're sort of done now, I can ease off a little bit, the rest of them in the stern didn't, but about four, it wasn't like you were thinking.
No, absolutely not. I think that's part of what makes the boat race so special, is anything can happen right up to the very end. So you have to give it your all and leave no stone unturned. And I want to say a massive thank you to Oxford as well. They've trained just as hard, put in just as many hours and put out a superb race. So hopefully it was exciting for everyone to watch. It was definitely exciting to be a part of.
Well done. Madeline, you're a first year medic. Does that mean you're going to be doing this for the next 5 years?
Oh yeah, hopefully, hopefully yes.
You've got the taste for it now.
Yeah.
You're going to be back next year, are you?
Yeah, it's like nothing else. I've rowed at other clubs since I was a junior, but this is special.
And you've also run ultra marathons.
Oh. Run is a strong word.
You're a glutton for punishment when it comes to fitness stuff.
Yeah, I do try and do quite a bit of charity work.
Very good. Oh, are you? When's that?
London.
Are you? Well, good luck for that.
Thank
you should be superbly fit, having
Thank
been
you.
training for as long as you have.
Thank
Beth,
you.
what are your thoughts at the end of that race?
Just so proud to be a part of this team. Like, everyone has worked so hard, and we're just doing it for each other, really. We're just I'm like, honestly, these friendships are going to be for life. Like, it's not just for this year. Like, honestly, it's the people that make the team, and it's been amazing.
You're all going to be at the dinner after the boat races on Sunday,
Yeah.
presumably. What are you going to be doing between now and then?
Oh, we actually have planned a 100-kilometre walk from Henley to Putney next week, or this week, so we're going to be doing that in 24 hours, hopefully.
And presumably cheering on your fellow One Club crewmates on the day. Well, you've given them a decent start. Annabelle, you've been rowing for... Did you take up rowing at Cambridge?
Yeah, I learned to row at Emmanuel College about 4 or 5 years ago.
Right.
And then, I was at Club Labs last year, so yeah.
And you were the first to cross the line?
Yeah! It felt incredible, honestly. Like, haven't experienced anything like it. And I've got 4 amazing sisters at home, but I've gained 9 more and a brother, and it's just such an incredible team.
Well, you put in a fantastic performance, all of you, so many congratulations. I'll leave you to go to your champagne and see if I can grab a word in a few moments with the Oxford guys, who are just putting their boat away as we speak. They came off the water, as you would expect, looking rather disconsolate, having paddled past the victorious Cambridge lightweight crew and then spun, and then they came into a rather more subdued welcome. We'll see if we can grab them in a few moments to get their reflections.
Well, after that fantastic series of interviews with 9 very jubilant students there, Grace, we've got the chance to review the start of the race once again. And although we can see, look, this was the only time that Oxford led Cambridge, and then the Light Blues really started to gather momentum, and the position reversed, and Cambridge simply went away.
Yeah, and it sounded like from those interviews Cambridge was aware Oxford was going to give a very spirited start and really try to take it to them in those first few strokes. So I guess them knowing that and having clearly talked about that, it didn't faze them, and they were still confident enough to get on their rhythm. And you can see here, like, as soon as they got on their base rhythm, they just started edging out and confident around that first little outside bend that they could do that, and then their advantage would kick in.
And that's actually a sign of growing maturity in any rower, isn't it? Because you need to work on the plan that actually you might be down off the start, and the learning point is not to be discouraged by that. You've got your own race plan, you know what you and your crew are capable of, you can come back from that, and that's exactly what Cambridge did in this case.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, I believe that essentially probably the most important part of the race is when you transition from that start rhythm to your base rhythm. You can't do anything if you don't get onto your rhythm. If you're constantly chasing and you can't do anything. So that's where Cambridge really nailed it, and you can see the excitement and the emotion when they cross the line, and it all sinks in that this has actually happened, and I'm sure it feels a bit surreal at the moment, but this is when it's hard to take in with all the lactate sitting in the legs at the same time.
Yes, and the lactate is so important, isn't it? Because we talked about the pain of a long distance race, but there's that pain that kicks in over a 2,000 metre race. and it's the competitors who can tolerate that pain in the muscles, who can overcome that and still work through it. That is what a deciding factor, isn't it, in a winning performance?
Yeah, part of long distance racing is just who can sit in that pain the longest and deal with that. It's a long time to be on the red line, but that's what you train for, and we were always taught and kind of approach training like you do so many hard trainings that are often harder than this session. Like you will do back-to-back races that are similar distances to this, to know that when it comes down to the day of this, you're like, I know I can survive this because I've done worse in training, and I'm sure that's what they have trained for, and the athletes know it's going to be uncomfortable, but they're going to be able to get through it and just feel right with sitting in that very uncomfortable level of pain for quite a long time.
Well, we've said it before, I'm sure we'll say it again, rowing is one of those sports that as an entirely innocent bystander, you witness a great rowing race out there in the middle of the water and you think, hey, that's easy, that looks so poetic, that looks so flowing. You don't realise the sheer grit and determination and the long hours of training that go into making it look so easy.
Yeah, I think it's a unique sport as well, and the fact that most of the training you do is longer than the distance you race. I always compare it for people training for marathons and things. You don't go and run longer than a marathon. You often, all your sessions are shorter, but I know for 2K racing you do lots of 5K races, 7K, 8K, and this you might do multiple 5Ks or 6Ks in a session. So it's an unfortunate sport that a lot of training has to go into it.
So I think we have now assembled the Oxford lightweight crew, so let's see if we can cut back to Quintin Boat Club and in the capable hands of Mark Davis.
Well, I'm here with an understandably rather disconsolate and tearful Oxford lightweight crew. Victoria, Fletcher, Cox, what were you saying to your crew during the course of that race?
I was just telling them to row really, really fast and focus and trust me and trust each other and remember how hard we worked.
You worked very hard for, 8 months? It must feel very difficult. I suppose that's a yes.
Yeah.
When you're as far behind as you were off the start, from quite early on in the race, finding things to say to keep the crew motivated is very challenging. Did you just go with the race plan that you had?
Yeah, and I sort of kept telling them to trust the bends that were coming in our advantage and to trust that I would steer them the fastest line that I could to make sure we just held on and fought for as long as possible.
And they did, held on and fight. I mean, you've gone over the course, you've completed a grueling race. What are you going to take out of it?
I want to come back and do it again next year.
Come back all the stronger for it?
Yeah.
Well, good for you. Katie?
Yeah.
Tough times.
Yeah, tough day in the office.
What did the Cambridge crew say to you? I saw you all exchanging hugs over there. What did they say to you as they came past?
Well, I think that we all have a respect for each other. There's not very many people that understand what being a lightweight is like, and as much as we're rivals on the water, off the water we're all going through the same thing, and I think that they can sympathise with what it would be like to lose, and there's a lot of respect between the two clubs.
People always say that you don't really know what it means to win a boat race until you've lost one. You therefore do come off this, if you've got the opportunity to come back next year, as many of you have, that much more determined to get the result.
Well, I have lost 3 now. Yeah, I might have another one in me.
Every year.
You've still got you're still going to come back and give it another go.
Before today I said no, but I might think otherwise.
But now the determination, I can see the
I'm still chasing the feeling.
Indigo, what is your take out from that race?
It's my first boat race and I've never been prouder of
any group of people in my life as I am with these girls, and I don't think I've ever wanted anything in my life as much as I wanted to win. But I think all of us know that we have that drive in us now, and we're not going to stop until we get that win.
Was there ever a moment during the course of the race where you thought we're going to come back? You had a very good start. You got off the blocks very, very quickly. Was there ever a moment where you looked across and thought, we can do this?
I did not look across. I was staring straight at Katie's back. I had beautiful, beautiful lats, which I've spent many hours staring at and training. Sorry, that's probably inappropriate. But also, I know from our experience in fixtures that we can bring it back at the end, and we had, so I never lost trust for a minute that everyone was giving it like 200%. Yeah, you don't really quite believe it until the end, what the result is, for me, in my case.
Rosie,
yep.
There isn't going to be another chance for you. You graduate at the end of the summer, and you're going to be a doctor from August. What will you take out of this race?
I think trialling with this squad for the last 2 years has been just incredible. Being surrounded by such amazing women that push themselves through so many highs and lows throughout the season. I mean, that's going to follow me through the rest of my life. I'm so proud of everyone standing here, and I'm so grateful for you all. Yeah.
Well, the camaraderie is clear from all of you. Jojo, you and Katie have been rowing together for quite a while, haven't you?
Yeah, that's right. I beat Katie in her first race when we were 13.
I'm sure she'll be delighted to be reminded about that right at this moment. No wonder you're described as voted the most intimidating tutorial partner of anybody in the crew. At least you can raise a smile at a difficult moment.
Yeah. No regrets under Chiswick Bridge.
Very good. Molly, what are you going to take out of this?
Thank you to my crew for believing in me. This is my first year. It's only my second year rowing, and my first year rowing for the uni. I'm going to cry again. But thank you.
Well done. Abby, you started your career at Cambridge.
Oh,
is that not a good moment to be mentioning that?
Maybe not the best moment. Yeah. I mean, I learned a lot there, and I've learned even more here. I think Nick famously said she might have picked up a blade in Cambridge, but we taught her to row. So, yeah.
Well done. Rosie, you're the most cheerful of all of them. I had to drag you here. You learnt to row on this bit of river.
Yeah, I learned to row partly. Me and Katie have been here since day one. We did our first boat race together in first year. And I couldn't be prouder of the 9 people that went down the track today. Like, it means so much to me that we did that race and gave everything, and the result might not have been what we wanted, but we couldn't have tried any harder. Yeah.
Well done. And Catherine, well done to you as well. Is there anything that you can add to what all your crew have said? It's a difficult moment for all of you, I know.
Just to reiterate that it hurts to lose, but it hurts a little less to do it with such incredible support around you.
Well, you've all been extremely valiant, and I'm sure you will take something out of it when the pain eventually subsides. But well done, well competed, well fought. A very subdued, as you might expect, Robert, Oxford lightweight crew, but clearly a well-knit and friendly group of guys who are going to take something out of their defeat today. Many of them are will be trying to come back for next year.
Yes, a really important point from Mark there, and all credit to Oxford for some really highly articulate answers there, despite being the losing crew, Grace.
Yeah, I thought what Katie said, the stroke suit of the Oxford crew is exactly right. These 2 crews have put in the same amount of time and effort and energy and hours, and someone has to win, someone has to lose, and the respect that they have for each other, knowing what training they have all gone through, is second to none, and they're really the only ones that understand it. And obviously a lot of emotion and a lot of disappointment, but I mean, it just shows how much they care about it and how much they want it, and unfortunately it's sport and someone has to come away with the result that you're not quite after, but I think they can be very proud of what they've put into it, and even getting to the start line is an achievement, making the crew.
So after that win for Cambridge in the lightweight women's boat race, we can now turn our attention to the men's race. But first, let's get a word from our main sponsor, Interactive Investor, and here's their chief exec, Richard Wilson.
Investing just got better with Interactive Investor. In a world that costs more, you can now invest with us for less than $5 a month. Investor Essentials is our newest and lowest monthly subscription. For a flat fee of $4.99, you get an ISA, trading account, and access to more than 40,000 UK and international investments. And you can do it all on the go with our mobile app or on our website. We're already home to more than 400,000 investors. So why not join them and say hello to better investing with Interactive Investor.
Hello, I'm Richard Wilson, Chief Executive of Interactive Investor. I'm delighted to be in our 4th year of our partnership with the Lightweight Boat Races. Throughout this period, it's continued to demonstrate the power of teamwork, hard work, and going the extra mile. I wish you every success on and off the water, and may the best team win. Good luck.
Well, we now turn our attention to the lightweight men's boat race. Started in 1974 at the instigation of an undergraduate from St John's College, Cambridge. And after that first tentative race, rowed over the Henley course, almost 50 years ago now, the race grew, and then for the last several years it has taken place here on the championship course at Putney. From Putney to Mortlake. And just as in the lightweight women's race, you can see here Cambridge have a considerable advantage. Cambridge 28 wins to 19 for Oxford. Cambridge highly dominant in the first few years of this race. They had a very strong coaching program, and it's been one of the features both of the open weight races and the lightweight races that long winning sequences were a feature of the 20th century, and that's by no means been true in more recent years. Okay, let's have a look at the two crews taking part, starting with Oxford. So the full lineup in the stroke seat for Oxford. Aggie Crumpton, or Agamemnon Elvis Crumpton to give him his full name, the most highly experienced athlete in either boat here. Believe it or not, he will become Oxford Lightweight's most capped blue boat athlete after this year's race. He's got 4 races under his belt. This will be his 5th. Made his appearance for the reserve crew way back in 2017. 26 years old, the senior athlete on board, the 4th year of a DPhil in chemistry for Aggie Crumpton. And behind him in the 7th seat we've got Matthew Hudson, 21 years of age, doing a Masters in Global and Imperial History, based at UNIV. Comes from the northeast, first rowed at Tyne Rowing Club, and went to school at Royal Grammar School, Newcastle. Has taken part in the European University Rowing Championships last year. In the 6th seat, 24-year-old Ollie Featherstone, 3rd year of a DPhil in clinical medicine, based out of Oriel College. Oriel, a college with a very strong rowing history. Silver medalist in the European University Championships 3 years ago in the lightweight men's 4. A veteran from last year's losing crew in the lightweight men's race. And behind him, Adam Pattenden, one of the tallest men in the crew, 1m87 from St Edmund Hall. He's doing a Masters in Engineering Science. Strong rowing career as a junior, went to school at Shrewsbury, one of the leading rowing schools in the country. And behind him we've got Sam Baker, a Balliol man. He's doing a DPhil in engineering. Now, he started his rowing unusually at one of the lower tideway clubs down at Globe Rowing Club. That's just short of Greenwich. Pretty choppy water down at Globe traditionally, so he'll be used to the what can kick up here on the tideway on the championship course. Competed for England at the Home International Regatta a few years ago. In the 3-seat we've got Alec Berry. He's another Balliol man, another one who's doing a Masters in Engineering Science. Hometown at Worcester, and indeed he started his rowing career at Royal Grammar School, Worcester. Harrison Kiefer in the 2-seat, facing his 4th year in the Oxford Lightweight Blue Boat. An American, hometown Philadelphia, 30 years of age, the senior athlete in years in the Oxford crew. And at bow we've got the Oxford president, Zach Abel, from St Catherine's College. He's got dual South African and Irish nationality, regards Cape Town as his hometown, went to school in South Africa. Now, he comes straight out of the spare pair last year, jumping into the presidency, so quite a baptism of fire for Zach Abel there in the bow seat. And their Cox, Rollo Orme. He's got a reading from Masters in Engineering Science at Lincoln College. Strong rowing background or coxing background, went to school at Hampton, one of the strongest rowing schools in the country. And every year he's trialled, I think this is the 3rd year he's trialled for the lightweight boat, and he's been the youngest on every occasion. 20 years of age, the youngest member of the Oxford lightweight crew. And for Cambridge then, Cambridge coming into this race as the reigning champions. Here's their Cox, Teja Sentil Nathan, an American. And I think we'll come back to Teja in a moment, because here's Ben Jones, who's in the 7th seat, 20 years of age, a law student at Magdalen. Previous winner of the Academic Cox Fours at the Falls Head. And previously won the GB France International as a junior some 7 years ago. And I think we've lost the batting order. Who have we got next? Harry Fieldhouse, their president, 23 years of age, from St John's College. He's in the 1st year of a PhD in engineering. The only member of this year's Cambridge crew to take part in last year's victorious lineup. So unlike his Oxford counterpart, he's, as the sole survivor, he's come straight into the presidency. And then behind him we've got Gianluca Vartan, reading for a BA in architecture, dual nationality, British and Italian. He's at Homerton College. Now, his home club, where he first rowed, was at the Suburbia Club, just south of Rome, which has become a familiar course on the international calendar these last few years. Has hosted 2 or 3 World Cups down there. And then in the 4th seat we've got Joe Holy, 24 years of age, also at St Catherine's College, in his 3rd year of a PhD in maths. He's a Yorkshireman, hometown Harrogate. Behind him, Sam Clark in the 3 seat, the 2nd Magdalen student in this crew. He's reading for a PhD in Earth Sciences, started his rowing at his college. Despite having gone to Royal Grammar School, Guildford, it doesn't appear that he undertook any rowing at that particular venue, unusually. And then at the 2 seat we've got Sam Taylor from Clare College in his 4th year of a Masters in Materials Science. Started his rowing up in the northeast at Durham, his hometown. and the crew complete by Tom Heppel, 20 years of age. He's a psychologist reading for a BA in psychological and behavioural sciences. He's from Birmingham and started his rowing at Birmingham Rowing Club, where they row on that minute course at Edgbaston Reservoir. And we can now finally go back to stroke, the stroke of the Cambridge crew. Lewis Gray, here he is, a geography student from St Catherine's College. Started his rowing at Royal Shrewsbury School, with whom several notable successes. He's rowed in the Princess Elizabeth Challenge Cup, the student eights, or schoolboy eights competition at Henley for the last 2 years. And just to complete the bio on their Cox, who we saw flash past on the screen, Teja Senthil Nathan, 23 years old, doing a Masters in Planning, Growth and Regeneration at Girton College. Here she is, an American student. Just weighed in at 48 kilos, very light indeed, so she's the only Cox in the programme today, having to carry dead weight to make her weight up to the minimum of 50 kilos. Highly experienced Cox for 4 years at Columbia as an undergraduate. And that completes the lineup for the Cambridge crew. So earlier, after the toss, well, I had the chance to catch up with the two presidents for Oxford and Cambridge. Well, I'm now with Zach Abel, the president of Oxford University Lightweight Rowing Club. Welcome, Zach. Now, you stepped up from last year's spare pair into the hot seat. How does that feel?
Yeah, it's quite an exciting move. I think last year, being on the periphery, I'd actually spent quite a bit of time away from rowing and kind of took the year to get back into it. But really enjoying this year in the bigger boats, bigger crews, lots of excitement. Obviously looking forward to the race. Fantastic day for it as well. And I've enjoyed the season so far.
You've come back with a very strong squad. How many returning men from last year's boat have you got?
We've got 4 from the blue boat last year. Quite a lot of experience mixed in there. Aggie Crumpton, who will be competing in his 5th blue boat race. Harrison Kiefer in his 4th. And then Ollie Featherstone and Matt Hudson both in their 2nd. So looking forward to leaning on a bit of their experience. And they've obviously been hugely helpful in the build-up to the race today.
How much has last year's defeat put sort of new heart into those guys looking for revenge?
I think quite a lot. Obviously we had a good streak going before that, and there are a couple of people that do want vengeance, I suppose, on the back of last year. So that's been a big motivating factor throughout the season.
So looking forward to narrowing the gap, because of course Cambridge lead overall in the series, don't they?
Of course they do, and I think they had a very good run through the late 80s or mid 80s perhaps. So we're hoping we can get back on top and keep on closing that gap.
Very best of luck today, Zach.
Thank you very much.
Well, I'm now with the Cambridge Lightweight Men's President, Harry Fieldhouse. Harry, you're the sole survivor from last year's winning boat. How does it feel to come into this race with a comparatively fresh squad?
It's very exciting, to be honest. We're really looking forward to going down the course and seeing what we can do today.
How many guys did you have reporting for training back in September to generate this year's new squad?
We were up at about 17 or 18 at the start of the year, and now we're down to 12.
And your training camps, what did that include through the closed part of the season?
Yeah, so we started with a bit of a training camp before term started in Cambridge, in Ely, and then we progressed with our training through that term. Then over Christmas we went to Orense in Spain for a training camp there, which I think really helped us progress before coming back to Cambridge for the rest of the Lent term.
And it's got to be a little warmer than it was here in the UK, right?
It was indeed. It was very nice. Bit rainy though, but we take what we get.
Certainly warmer than Ely anyway.
Definitely warmer than Ely, yeah.
Very best of luck in today's race, Harry.
Thank you very much.
Well, we've heard from the two presidents. I don't know about you, Grace, but the same contrast in experience as we saw in the lightweights race. So the losing Oxford crew, they've come back with strength in depth, with so many returners from last year's losing crew. Cambridge, for their part, have come in with just one survivor from last year's winning crew. So it's the old thing, will that Philip from last year's win have put new heart into the squad to drive them forward today?
Yeah, experience in this race is very valuable. I found that last year, having a few of my crewmates having done it before, it really made quite a difference. So if Oxford can draw on that today, that might manage to give them a bit of an advantage. On the flip side, Cambridge, it's like we were talking about before, once you know you can win a race, you get that level of confidence that you can do it again. So I think both crews have different advantages to draw on, and it's going to be interesting to see who can come out on top today. And they'll be sitting there and they won't know the results of the women's race, so they won't know how that's played out. So it's a completely fresh start and a completely new ball game.
Yes, and of course let's not forget the coaching teams behind the two crews, because of course when you've got the consistency through the coaches that they've been in charge for many years, they will have picked up a degree of authority as well as their own coaching competence to be able to carry over those winning factors from one year to the next to enthuse the newcomers in that year's squad, won't they?
Yeah, you learn so much every single season, so I think the longer you do it for, the more you would have experienced. You would have been through it all essentially, and can impart that knowledge on the new bunch of athletes you're teaching this year. And the boat race is a race like no other, so the experience plays a big part of it, and the coaches really drive that. They set up a season where their athletes can flourish, a program that's competitive but supportive, and they have the ability to really make a squad that can cope with the gravity of competing on a race like this.
Well, a few minutes to go until the start of the lightweight men's race. Although the scheduled start is 11:30, it is within the ability of the umpire to get the crews underway whenever he thinks that they are level and ready. So of course the umpire, one of the unsung heroes of any particular race, so Matthew Holland, who's going to be in charge of the lightweight race, he's an experienced cox over the tideweight course. Let's get a word or two from him. Right now I'm with Matthew Holland, who's going to be umpiring the lightweight men's boat race. Matthew, a big wide river, two crews, what can possibly go wrong?
A lot is the simple answer. Hopefully the crews are quite experienced. They've had a lot of time training on the river, so they know the ins and the outs of it. But my job principally is to make sure that the crews are safe as we go down the course, looking out for big logs, any stray crews that might get in our way, and make sure that we steer them around them, and to stop them from fouling each other, so to make sure that they don't clash and cause any damage or have an incident that could affect the outcome of the race.
Now, I think the rules today, there's a notice to mariners, but there's not a river closure. Is that going to make any difference to your job and the crew's progress?
Well, it could do, is the simple answer. It makes it more fun, I think. It means the river is living and breathing, it's alive, and we're on a work day, so people are going about their jobs on the river. And hopefully they should keep out of our way, but something could get in the way, and then that's my job to try and work out what to do.
You've coxed two boat races on the Putney to Mortlake course. Any advice that you've got for the coxes today?
I try and say the smoother the better has always been my philosophy. I always umpire the races the way I would steer them as a cox, so I'm guided by steering tangentially to the inside bank around every corner, making sure that you're smooth, you're sweeping it out, and no aggressive movements on the rudder.
Well, I wish you a trouble-free race.
Thank you very much.
Well, I think we would all agree that we're looking for a trouble-free race. It's one of the great conundrums, isn't it, Grace, on a river that is so wide. You've got two crews that are racing. What can possibly go wrong? Why is it that they have this magnetic attraction to each other that we've witnessed so often in boat races down the years?
On a body of water like the Tideway, there is a fastest stream on there, so I think both crews are going to be fighting to both coxswains will be fighting to put their crews in the fastest water. And saying that, when you start to get close to another crew, for some reason the boats just attract to each other, and it's the coxswain's responsibility to steer out but you don't want to do a sharp turn because that is hugely detrimental to your crew, and essentially you're just checking your boat by turning the rudder that's sharp. So you want to get out of the danger, but do it smoothly, which takes a little while, and it's sort of something you want to avoid, but then equally it adds a little bit of excitement and flair to the race. So I'm sure Matt, as the umpire, won't be wanting that to happen, but he's also had the experience of coxing this twice, so he knows all the tricks that the coxswains want to do, and will be very aware of them sort of jostling for the best water, but he'll be trying to keep them as far apart as possible. And we've got a boat you can see on the screen that's going to be puttering along the course, so hopefully the rowers don't catch up to that, but that might affect when we start, and they might be rowing through a bit of wash, unfortunately.
Yes, this is going to be exciting, isn't it? Because I'm not sure where that workboat is going to put in, because plainly if that tow continues all the way up the championship course, then it's going to provide an interesting potential hazard for the two racing crews. It comes back to the point that I was asking Matthew in my interview there, that there is what's called a notice to mariners that is put out. So that means that everybody afloat here on the tidal Thames has noticed that the races are going to take place, so that they can take appropriate action and modify their behaviour to take account of those racing crews. But there is not a complete river closure, which is what prevails during the open weight races that are going to take place next Sunday. So things could happen in an unpredictable way, couldn't they?
Yeah, and the boat we've just seen sort of putter along in front of us, I think they've obviously noticed that the race is going on, but decided just to keep going anyway. So there might be a little bit of a hold while they let them get enough of a head start that the crews aren't going to be chasing them down the course, because it's not a boat you want to come up to halfway through the race, wash-wise, or just, I don't know where you'd go.
Well, judging by the size of the vessel, I suspect it pulls quite a few feet of draft, so it is only possible for that vessel to proceed at this stage of the tide, because as we look out from the river here, from the balcony at London Rowing Club, you can see that the tide has flooded to a considerable extent. The edge of the water is now almost up to the roadway here on Putney Embankment. So a marked difference to the conditions that prevailed during the women's race that we saw just over an hour ago. But coming back to the point about that narrow channel, you made the important point, Grace, that the two crews are fighting over for the fastest piece of water roughly in the middle of the river. Of course, it's important to remember that the floor of the river here is V-shaped, isn't it, on the tideway, and that means that the speed of the tide is different depending on whereabouts you are on the river. So both coxes are fighting it out, trying to ensure that their crew is sitting on that fastest strip of water, which is less than 2 boat widths, and that's why we get the fight, isn't it? Because both crews want to force the other one off that fastest strip so that they can own it.
Yeah, that's something I had to learn very quickly last year. I think most of the river racing I'd previously done was on rivers that were not as tidal like this, and in my mind I'm like, take the fastest course, cut all the corners. Distance wise, I wanted to take the shortest route possible, but on this body of water that's actually not the quickest way to get from A to B. You want to stay in the middle, and the crew on the Middlesex side in that first bit, you might think they really want to cut in and take the advantage of that first corner, but for them staying in the middle slightly more closer to the Surrey side is more advantageous. So there's a lot that goes into it, and these coxswains spend the whole season sort of figuring out this and practicing it and sort of getting the lay of the land, so that when it comes down to today, they can row in the fastest water.
Yes, and for the more experienced crews, particularly the open weight crews, we see the coxes being taken over the course for the practice outings of their own in motor launches, don't we? Being coached by experienced watermen who know the way that the tide behaves at different stages of the tide, at different times of the year, because that V shape that we were talking about, its position can alter according to the way the riverbed develops over the seasons.
Yeah, I remember last year our two coxswains, the Cambridge and Oxford coxswain for our women's race, were taken out in launches and had to drive the course in front of the umpire to make sure they know it, and I found that quite funny at the time, that they were out there doing their own little practice boat race, and I was like, oh, who's going to win in these motorboats? But it makes such a difference, and you want to make sure everyone knows all this information before the actual race, because you don't want to get to the actual race and something go wrong and it affects the result. So much time and energy and effort goes into this event that you want it to be smooth, and I'm sure the umpire's sitting there right now being hoping and praying that the crews can get off to a smooth start and it's not going to be clashes and crashes that dictate who wins or loses the race.
Now I understand that we are going to have a few minutes delay on the start of the race because of that workboat that we saw making its way upstream just a few minutes ago. The umpire keenly aware that the presence of such a vessel on the racing course could seriously impede the progress of both participating crews. So no other vessels in sight. Now this is an interesting point, isn't it? Because when you've done your warm-up, both crews will have gone downstream, probably as far as Wandsworth Bridge, just a little way beyond Putney bridges that we can see to the right of our shot here. They'll have done their warm-up, they'll have done their final prep, and they'll have reached the start line, and then suddenly somebody said, actually, no, not yet. You must have been in that position, haven't you, Grace, over your years of international competition? What goes through your mind at that point?
Yeah, it's not ideal. You don't want to be sitting there for too long before the race, so you need to be adaptable and you need to be able to change to what goes on. And I know for a race like this, when things like this can happen, you have most likely practiced this, so you would be there and maybe your coach would say, oh, actually we're going to be delayed 10 minutes, and you would know, okay, that means we're going to turn around, do a little bit of extra rowing, a few extra bursts, because I mean it's not freezing out there, but it's not warm either, and once you're warmed up and you're you sweated a little bit, if you sit for too long you start getting pretty cold, and there is nothing worse than starting a race cold, and the pain kicks in very, very early on, and it's not a nice feeling. So this is when the crew needs to adapt and not get too phased. Both crews are in the same position. Just keep moving, making sure you're staying relaxed but staying warm at the same time, so you can avoid that initial lung burn if you let yourself cool down, which is not enjoyable.
Yes, you mentioned an important point about practicing, because it comes down to coaching experience again, getting your crews, getting your athletes to practice every single potential situation. It's all about the visualization and running through the physical and psychological effects that different events might have on your preparation and indeed the race itself.
Yeah, exactly, and I know last year we did this, and I know that they would have done it again this year, but you've no doubt sat down and talked about every possible scenario that could happen. The tide didn't turn on the same time, so it's delayed significantly. Something like this happens and you've got a small delay, something breaks, equipment failure, all of that. You catch a crab in the start. You would have talked through all those different scenarios and made a plan so that the crew was very confident if any of this happened, and it wasn't a big deal. You're just like, oh, this has happened, so now we do this, and it makes it easy and not a stressful event. But yeah, it's not something you really want, but equally it's the nature of a race like this, and you're very aware that it could potentially happen. And they probably would have practiced this in the fixtures as well, which never quite run to exact times.
Well, we understand that the revised start time, because of the presence of this large vessel on the course, is now 11:45. So there's going to be another 8 minutes until the lightweight men's boat race can get underway. So a quick break here. Let's hear from our supporters.
Investing just got better with Interactive Investor. In a world that costs more, you can now invest with us for less than $5 a month. Investor Essentials is our newest and lowest monthly subscription. For a flat fee of $4.99, you get an ISA, trading account, and access to more than 40,000 UK and international investments. And you can do it all on the go with our mobile app or on our website. We're already home to more than 400,000 investors. So why not join them and say hello to better investing with Interactive Investor?
Well, welcome back to the pre-race coverage of the lightweight men's boat race, and we get our first shot of the men's crews, and they, as you can see, they are paddling on down to the commercial riverside just upstream of Wandsworth Bridge. You can see the big containers there on the bank that are a significant feature of the riverside scene in that area. Of course, once the delay had been announced, both Coxes will have spun their crews and taken them back downstream again. As Grace was saying, keep them warm, keep them motivated, just gently paddling along, not doing any particular work, just keeping those muscles moving as they prepare for the race in a few minutes' time. One of the other features, you can see it a little in this shot, can't you, Grace, that the fact that the tide is now running, despite the fact there's no particular strong wind here, it is a southwesterly that's blowing, and against the incoming tide there's a little bit of a popple that is being raised, and I just wonder when these two crews get around upstream of Hammersmith Bridge and they're heading on down the long Corney Reach into the prevailing wind. We saw it a little, didn't we, in the women's race, that it got a bit popply. I wonder whether we're going to see a greater severity of those conditions when we get to that point.
Yeah, we definitely saw it a little bit in the women's race, and from looking at these pictures it looks like it has increased a bit, so that's going to sort of kick in a little bit stronger, I would say, and it'd be another element that these crews are going to have to deal with and cope with when they round that bend where the water can tend to start to chop up a bit. And the water on the Tideway, it's never perfect. It's not like rowing on any other river that you're never going to get that lovely flat unbouncy water. So that they'll be used to it, and I'm sure in the fixtures they would have had good practice, and they're getting a lot of wash, and you can see another big boat sort of puttering down the course again. So the men aren't having a lot of luck with their start, but it was a very, very clear start for the women's race, but it seems like all the boats have had a late start, a late morning, and all kind of kicking into their work now, which is unfortunate for the race.
I think this is a factor here in the fact that for the first time in the history of this particular event, it is being run on a weekday. For complex logistical reasons that we need not go into, it's the first time it's been run on a Monday, which is a work day, so I suspect that despite that notice to mariners, we are seeing a great deal more commercial river craft afloat than we would normally expect on the usual race day for this event, which is of course a Sunday.
Yeah, and I guess the commercial crafts are probably less willing to stop and put their work on hold for the rowers, which is unfortunate, but it's the nature of it. And I think this one, because it's going against the way of racing, hopefully won't cause another delay, and if it can get clear of the start line before the crews get there, it would be ideal. But it's making Matthew Holland have a few decisions to make, and I'm sure he'll be supported by others, but he's not having the easiest time of clearing the start zone for these crews.
Yeah, so a real headache for the umpire as he tries to juggle the various factors in deciding when to get this race underway. Here he is, Matthew Holland. We spoke with him earlier, the veteran of 2 boat races, steering Cambridge in the open weight boat race on 2 previous occasions, in 2017 and 2019. Just conferring with his advisors, because in theory it'll be 2 minutes before we get this race underway. And from this vantage position he's just looking, that's the North Bank there, the flats at Ranelagh, with the grounds of the Hurlingham Club over to the right behind those trees. So he's just looking up at Putney Bridge, deciding what, if anything, further might take place that will delay the start of the race. I suppose it's worth saying that it's not beyond the bounds of possibility, is it, that if that big workboat continues on the championship course, this race might well catch up with it before the boat clears the finish line.
Yeah, well, when we went to that visual from Hammersmith Bridge, you saw it only eventually getting up there, so it's not travelling fast, and the rowers are going to be travelling significantly faster. So I think that's why they had to do such a significant delay to hopefully stop that happening. And it's a long way, and it had only travelled a couple k's, so they do need to give it a good berth. Otherwise, that would happen, and it would be a lot to deal with for coxswains, umpires, rowers, if you were catching a boat of that size.
That means they'll be on the starboard side, right? So we can pass them to starboard. I've had enough of this shit.
Well, the workboat that was proceeding downstream at least appears to be clear of the action, so that's at least one potential obstacle out of the way. So, just in case you've just joined our live coverage here on the video stream, here is the 2023 lightweight men's boat race about to get started. We very much hope. Here's Matthew Holland about to speak to the crews. It looks as though there is going to be a further delay, because plainly they are not in a position that is ready to race. So what we've witnessed is a number of commercial vessels on the course. Just to reiterate, a notice to mariners has gone out from the PLA that is responsible for policing the tidal Thames, to indicate to those commercial craft that racing is taking place, but there is not a river closure. So it's a matter of sharing this space, which is both a workplace and a sporting arena. And here's the culprit. Well, let's not use pejorative terms. This is the boat that is quite legitimately making its way upstream, but in the centre of the course. Now, I suppose that the umpire does have the option, should the race catch up with this vessel, of steering the boats, the racing craft around it, but of course they've then got to work through the wash that this boat is creating, and that's not going to do anybody any favours, is it?
No, and that would be a lot to concentrate on. Him, the umpire Matthew, communicating that to the coxswains, who are also trying to keep motivating their crews and talking to their crews, and they are very focused on what they are telling their crew to do then and there, and having to sort of tune out of that and listen to the umpire takes a lot of concentration. And it seems like we might be coming closer to a race start, hopefully.
Yes, Matthew Holland has given the crews the order to turn, I think, and obviously that means that we are only a couple of minutes away from race time now, finally.
Cambridge spin. And the university boat race is taking place between Putney and Chiswick Bridges. U4 off 2023. Notice to Mariners first.
And aside from Matthew, there's also another marshal that does the aligning on the side, who has quite an important job, because you have these crews that aren't held still in a start block and going to be desperate not to start behind. So you need to watch that those crews are sort of being fair and not trying to constantly touch up or get one ahead. So the side marshal has a big job in the start as well.
Enjoying the commentary on your umpire.
Yeah, so there you can see quite clearly there are two Putney bridges. Putney Rail Bridge is the first one that is downstream of Putney Road Bridge, with the familiar sight of a London Red bus crossing it now, just behind the red lorry. Massive stone abutments there on the base of the rail bridge. They were put there to strengthen the metal supports of that bridge. Let's not forget the bridge is a couple of 100 years old, and so those strengthening panels were put in some 35 years ago, because, as we were saying earlier, so the power of the incoming and outgoing tide really creates very strong forces indeed. But the two crews now making their way under starters' orders and are about to pass underneath Putney Road Bridge.
Cambridge pick them up side by side in sixes.
Over to the left you can see one of the launches. I believe that is there to, in theory, to follow the open weight crews, who are obviously down on the tideway and are beginning their final preparation for the open weight races next weekend. So we've got Cambridge on the left, Oxford on the right. Just as in the women's race, Cambridge won the toss. They chose the Surrey station, that's the left-hand lane, or they're always reckoned to be the safer option, because it means that if you simply hold your position down the outside of that first slight bend onto Middlesex, the right-hand bend, then it means that you've got the theoretically big advantage of having the inside lane around the big Hammersmith bend that marks the middle of the course. In the background we can hear the final remarks from the aligner and from the umpire as they try and get these two crews not only aligned and level, but also away from each other. The umpire couldn't possibly start the two crews in the positions they're in at the moment, because their blades are almost touching.
No, and opposed to the women's race, they had a big amount of distance between the two crews, but these ones have started a lot closer, which puts the crews in a lot more danger of initial clashes. So I guess they need to make the call right now how to separate them to avoid essentially clashing, but it looks like they might go for it, which is going to be an interesting start, and if both crews are pointing away from each other, they might get away safely, but it's going to make it more exciting for the umpire in that first minute or so. And you can see the gusts also picking up as well. It's definitely a bit windier than it was for the women's race. So there's a little bit more jobble on the water that they're going to have to deal with.
This is an incredibly high-risk strategy from the umpire to start the cruise when they are so close, but they are underway, and look at that. They were pointing away from each other when the go was given, weren't they, Grace?
Yeah, the Cambridge crew had to do a big steer in that start, which we kind of talked about before is difficult, and now they are literally tracking towards each other and gonna crash right off the bat from that very close start.
Cambridge at 42, Oxford at 44, and just look at the blades clashing. No shipwrecks so far, and they have pulled apart, and I suspect, we can't see or hear him, but I suspect Matthew Holland is absolutely bellowing at them to move away, which they have done, and Cambridge ease into a slight lead at this early stage.
Yeah, and you can see the Cambridge coxswain's body even getting into the turns he's taking. The turn she's taking, sorry. Some aggressive steering right off the bat, and both crews cope well with the clashes, but it's not exactly what you want to be doing. Oh, and we're coming together again. It's not a clean start, and you can hear Matthew Holland yelling at both crews essentially, not just one, saying both crews move apart.
Cambridge at 38, Oxford at 40, and I suspect that they are trying to force the foul in many respects, because when you come up hard on a crew that you believe is in your water, then this is very high risk strategy from the Oxford Cox here, isn't it? Oh, and the overlap, just look at that, Grace.
Yeah, this is a very, very high risk strategy, and especially at this point in the race when you're trying to push onto your rhythm, you're trying to cement what you want to hold for the rest of the race, and you're also worrying about, am I going to just hit my blade into someone else's blade? And you don't want to lose your handle, but the Oxford crew is really, really quite aggressively coming in, and then the Cambridge crew is really starting to take the corner. So I mean, if the Oxford crew can manage to sort of push up a little bit, it's almost going to be their blades, the Cambridge blades hitting the Oxford bow.
Well, you can see on screen there the stroke rates, 37 for Oxford, 38 for Cambridge. That's not the way it appears from my vantage point here. I've got Cambridge at 36, but whatever, Cambridge are beginning to eke out a further advantage, and I think we're only 2.5 minutes into this race, and just look at the way they have now crossed over. They believe that they have got enough clear water to cross right over into Oxford's lane here.
Yeah, it's very early on to be doing that, and the steering from both crews looks very aggressive. It doesn't look hugely smooth. I think the rowers will be really feeling it, and the Oxford crew is definitely going to be feeling the dirty water being pushed down from the Cambridge blades. But now is the point where Cambridge needs to make sure they keep moving away. They can't let Oxford come back on them, because they have crossed right in front of them, and if they manage to get overlap or get a little bit of contact, then they're in trouble of potentially being told off, essentially.
Yes, you're right there, because if Oxford really powered it on and came right up on Cambridge, Cambridge would be forced to move back onto their station, which would lose them ground, and then we'd see a completely different race. But goodness me, it's the positions that we saw in the women's race just a short while ago appear to be mirrored here. After that initial flurry, it looks as though Cambridge are moving away.
Yeah, they really are. With every stroke they're moving away, and I think it was an exciting first 4 or so minutes of the race with multiple clashes and that, but it looks like Cambridge has been able to get onto a base rhythm that is slightly faster than the Oxford base rhythm, and have been able to make it very clear to the umpire that yes, we are sitting in front, but we are consistently moving away, and if they can do that, they're going to be all right, and they're not going to be told to move back to the Surrey station.
Cambridge at 35, Oxford at 37, so Oxford certainly not losing heart, and they really are trying to pack on the power at that higher rate. But despite that, those 2 pips higher, they're not making any inroads onto the Cambridge lead, are they?
No, they're not, and hopefully that's an efficient rate for them. But they're going to have to really make sure that this point of the race, if they want to come back, it's like the women's race. They need to start making ground now, and it actually appears that the crews have just completely switched stations. And it's interesting from the Cambridge crew that they have really sitting quite far out to the Middlesex as well, as they start to come round that Hammersmith bend, but maybe that's where the coxswain believes is the fastest water in the middle of the river. But you would almost think that these crews started on the opposite stations than they did start on.
You would, wouldn't you? Yes. So Cambridge way over there on the right. They're able to choose exactly where they want to steer. Teacher Sentinel Nathan, the diminutive Cambridge Cox, really choosing her water carefully here. As I said earlier, she's picked up all her coxing experience in her home nation, the USA, 4 years at Columbia University. But she will have been tutored very well indeed on the vagaries of the tidal temps here, and you can just see from that fantastic drone shot the old Harrods Depository, now a block of luxury flats on the right of shot there, a familiar landmark on the boat race course, standing looking down on this commanding lead of some 3.5 lengths that Cambridge have now established as we move upstream within sight of Hammersmith Bridge.
Yeah, and you can see the Oxford crew there, and they're rowing a very aggressive rhythm. They look like when they get to the front, they really put their blades in with a lot of intent and move the boat on. And then you can see, but once again, it's the advantage you've got of sitting out in front. It looks like the Cambridge crew has more time out of the water. It looks a bit more patient and relaxed, but when you can see your opposition a few lengths behind you, it's a lot easier to slot into that rhythm, and you've got the advantage of being able to do that.
It comes back, doesn't it, to what we were saying during the women's race, that now the pressure is really on Rollo Orme, the Oxford Cox here. How is he communicating with his crew? How is he giving them a realistic picture of where they are without discouraging them? So on the one hand, he wants to urge them on to even greater efforts and narrow that margin, but on the other hand, he doesn't want to give too much away to risk dispiriting his crew.
No, it's a very, very tough position for Rollo to be in at the moment, and he's got to find that fine line, and this is their boat race, this is their opportunity. So regardless of where they're sitting, they're still going to be trying to get from A to B as fast as possible. So you can start using different measures, you can start using splits, you can start using landmarks to motivate your crew, but at the moment, essentially, it looks like the Cambridge crew is just taking inch by inch every single stroke, and at this point in the race, it doesn't look like they're going to let up. So it's going to be a big ask for Oxford to come back, but it's a very, very dominant first half performance from the Cambridge men.
Well, we're now into the second half of the 2023 lightweight men's boat race. And the margin between the two crews greater than it was in the women's race at this point, just off St Paul's Boat Club. And that stonking rate that Oxford were punching in has had to be reduced because the lactate has kicked in hard. It is taking its toll, and is the pressure from the leading Cambridge crew has also taken its toll. So Oxford's now down at 36, but a pip or so higher than Cambridge, down at 34, 35. And there's the tower of Chiswick Church visible over the greenery of Chiswick 8, the island that is a significant landmark on the boat race course. And as Grace was saying just a few minutes ago, Cambridge are in that enviable position of being able to sit on that commanding lead and just row their own race. and surely there is no comeback from this sort of margin. I mentioned it was 3.5 lengths at Hammersmith Bridge. Well, it's a great deal more than that as we move down Corney Reach. Interesting that despite the weather conditions that we were talking about earlier, there's a little bit of a popple on the water, but the wind doesn't appear to be kicking up to any great extent. And goodness me, I can remember boat races which I've followed on many occasions on launches, and we've rounded the bend at Hammersmith, and literally this wall of water has appeared and the crews have entered it, and suddenly it's been a complete game changer.
Yeah, the Hammersmith bend, it is like it separates into a new river, and you can be in the nicest water and then you come around that bend and it's whitecapping. It's like a different beast. And I think we've probably all watched the infamous race where all the crews sunk, and very fortunate to have a lot better weather today, so the crews are able to put out performances and kind of show off their skills that they've been working on all season, and not have to fight their way down. And it's a bit choppy, it is, like they do have a bit to deal with, but nothing too extreme.
Yes, the water level shot there giving us clear view with a few waves breaking over the bow of the following umpire's launch, and splashing onto our camera lens there, for goodness sake. But no, Cambridge with that strong, even rhythm that they established so early on, and it comes back to what we were saying during the women's race. All 16 of these athletes in this lightweight men's race, they weighed in earlier this morning, a few hours ago, all under the minimum permitted weight of 72.5 kilos, with a crew average of less than 70 kilos. So the rules for the lightweight men's race exactly mirror the international regulations for lightweight men's crews. And because there's no particular weight advantage in terms of muscle mass and boat moving ability from sheer weight, then it comes down to technical proficiency, to cohesion, to rhythm, and doing exactly the same thing at exactly the same time. And that's one of the features of our sport that makes it appear so effortless to the casual observer. But there's a whole lot of effort going on in both those boats, isn't there?
Yeah, I think rowing always looks a lot easier from the outside than it does on the inside, and I think good crews make it look really easy, and it looks effortless. It looks like they're not trying that hard, but the pain these athletes will be in is huge. And I think especially with that light headwind, it's enough to kind of fatigue you that little bit quicker, and you've got to be efficient. Like they're probably around about halfway through the race, and so they've still got a long way to go. And you can see the Cambridge crew is in a rhythm that looks very maintainable. It looks like they sort of come out of the water, they have time around the back, and they're able to, kind of looks like they float forward. And when you're out of the water is the time when you can rest and recover, as short as that is. But you need to make the most of it, and it looks like the Cambridge crew is doing that well, and taking advantage of that.
Well, it's of no practical significance, but the big Hammersmith bend has run out, and the river begins to swing around for the final time to the right, giving the advantage in theory to the crew on the Middlesex station. But of course, from a very early stage in this race, once Cambridge gained the advantage and were able to cross over into Oxford's water, that lane draw became immaterial, because Cambridge can steer where they like, and Oxford for their part are simply playing catch up. Oxford still with that slightly higher rate. Credit to them, they've kept the degree of cohesion, so the synchronous nature of their stroke looking good, but the power is just dropping off because the fatigue, the lactic acid building up in those muscles, the pain must be absolutely excruciating, Grace.
Yeah, they'll be really feeling it now, and as you say, they still look very cohesive. The side that we can see, the stroke side, they are all going in and out together, and it looks like they're coming down to the water, they're not skying too much. So I think it just comes down to other aspects, and they have been brave and they are keeping it up. They are giving it a good shot, so it's impressive the determination they've got, and once again they're not going to know what's going to happen, so it's not over till it's over, but they've got a big hill to climb.
Barnes Bridge now coming into sight, the new walkway on the right hand side of your shot there, built in the last year or 18 months to create a walkable towpath to allow walkers to make their way through Barnes Bridge. Otherwise it means quite a detour around into rather boggy ground over to the right. Of course that won't bother the competitors here in the lightweight race itself. Cambridge now well clear of the bridge, and Oxford about to follow suit under the centre arch here.
Yeah, and it looks like the Cambridge men, their rate's getting a little bit lower and lower, and they've got the luxury of being able to do that and row a really efficient rhythm. Sometimes taking a little bit of the rate off, you will go faster if you've got the confidence that you can get more boat speed out of every run, and they have once again also the luxury of being able to do that and being able to see where Oxford is, so they're really capitalising on that, and coming around this bend they'll be feeling pretty good. Once again it's not over till it's over, but something significant would really have to happen to change this result in the last section of this race.
Interesting to note that Oxford, as we can see here, being stroked on bow side, just as their women's crew was. So Katie Wellstead, the Oxford lightweight president, had her blade sticking out to the left of her on the bow side of the boat, as opposed to the other way around, which is the traditional way. But that's all down to the best person, the best athlete to drive the rhythm of the boat, and then it's dependent on which side is their preferred side, isn't it, Grace?
Yeah, I guess traditionally it's normally stroke side, but occasionally you get an athlete that on bow side that is suited to sitting in stroke seat, and stroke seat's such an unusual position. It was never a seat I sat in or wanted to sit in for that matter, but there are athletes that are really suited to it. So in this crew, in the Oxford crew, it happens to be a bow sider, so that's how they rig it, and then follow suit down the boat. But it's a tough position. You're leading your crew. You don't have anyone to steer at the back of. I know the further forward you are on the boat, for me it feels like you have less people to watch and follow and draw on their strength, and they're behind you. But I don't envy stroke seats. It's not something I wanted to do.
Well, in fact, Cambridge also rowing with a bow side stroke as well. I didn't notice that, so that's our case in point. But we're talking about the niceties here. What we need to be talking about is the finish of the 2023 lightweight men's boat race, because the finish line is in sight. Teja Senthil-Nathan for Cambridge will be urging her crews on through these last few strokes, making sure that the concentration is there, making sure that there's no falter here, driving her crew onwards for a little bit of a spirited finish here, just over 18 minutes, so a lot faster than the women's race. And there they go, past the light and dark blue striped finish post that marks the finish of the boat race course, and Cambridge, bless them, are absolutely delighted, Grace.
Yeah, they'll be taking this moment, and all that hard work has paid off, and they rode a very, very dominant race. They led from, after a very exciting start with a few clashes, they just kept on pushing out and out, and there'll be some very, very happy athletes and coxswain, and they can enjoy that all their hard work has really paid off for them.
Well, a very impressive win by Cambridge. I'm just searching for my finish times here, because we don't have an official time as yet. It was 18 minutes something, And obviously we've only had a few years of both the lightweight men's and women's race over the championship course here from Putney to Mortlake, so it wouldn't surprise me at all if a new record has been established there, but we'll bring you news of that a little later once those figures have been confirmed, because we're getting a picture of, now here's something, the rather disconsolate looking Oxford crew, and the Oxford Cox's hand is raised. Now that normally indicates that he wishes to make a protest. What do you think's going on here, Grace?
Yeah, well, there was a lot of clashing at the start, and you can clashing in contact is grounds for disqualification. It just depends on whether the umpire deems that Cambridge caused Oxford to have a disadvantage or anything, but it'll be interesting to see what his exact point is.
So Rollo Orme, the Oxford Cox, now exchanging a few words with the umpire. Can't quite hear what he's saying.
Okay.
And it, you know, decided the outcome of the entire race.
Sure, I warned Cambridge based on their pointing as we came into that, but my view is the clash did take place in neutral water, and I warned both crews as it was taking place.
Yeah, I thought you were warning Cambridge before that. You not warning us. After that. So like, I couldn't get my blade in the water, which is like, how am I meant to do a start if I actually put my blade in? Yeah, I agree. You warned both.
Well, as we rather surmised, the debate here between the Oxford Cox and the umpire is around the circumstances in which the clash took place during those
You were pointing into them when the clash happened.
The umpire's view is that this race being neutral
it didn't happen on straight.
Both crews were warned accordingly, whereas unsurprisingly the Oxford Cox is taking the view that the clashes occurred in their water, and that Cambridge need to be penalised accordingly.
The outcome of the race, and I was warning both crews. I was warning both crews during the clash. I'm sorry, the results are going to stand.
So until this.
Thank you, umpire. Can you also check their ballots?
Yes, we've had confirmation from the umpire Matthew Holland that the result of the race will stand, which will no doubt disappoint Oxford here. Confirmation though, the winning time 18 minutes and 18 seconds, a win there for Cambridge by 11 lengths. And we can hear the whoops and the hollers from the Cambridge supporters on the foreshore here at Quinton Boat Club. And the news has just filtered through to Cambridge that their win has been confirmed. And unsurprisingly, they are absolutely delighted. A double win for Cambridge here at the Lightweight Boat Races 2023.
Yeah, very dominant performance from Cambridge on both the men's and women's side. A heated argument from the Oxford crew, and it's unfortunate there was a few clashes at the start, but as we heard, Matthew Holland said he believes it happened in neutral water. Both crews were sort of sitting in that as opposed to one crew being responsible, and he said that he didn't think it affected the outcome of the race, so that stands, and you can see the Cambridge crew getting to celebrate their win, and I guess probably find out that their women have also won, which will add to their joy and excitement at the same time.
Yes, and isn't it great that, of course, the women's crews and their supporters will have stayed on the foreshore here at the finish. So we've got a larger crowd to greet the winners and the losers as they make their way back into the riverbank here.
You can see the champagne getting ready for the traditional welcome to the land. But it's such a great atmosphere in a team when all your crews are successful together, and you can celebrate as one, and that's very fortunate that Cambridge gets to do that. And then on the other side, Oxford has two crews that will be slightly disappointed, but have hopefully taken a lot away from these races, and the athletes that can come back next year come back again with new learnings, new experiences, and stronger for it.
Yes, and that's an important point. It probably won't feel like that to the guys right now, dare I say it, but in the cool light of day, and all credit to them in the same way that we saw significant numbers of the athletes in both Oxford crews after their loss last year. They came back with new heart, determined to make a go of it, and that sort of resilience is something that is so important in top level sport, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You're never going to win all the time, and learning from your losses what makes it worth it. And often I think about all the times that I've done well, it's when I think about what got me there was the times that didn't do that well, and you can't see that at the very moment, and they won't be able to see that right this second. But looking back on it, I'm sure these losses will make some of these athletes go on to do very successful things in the sport because of the learnings they can take away today. And you can see all the Cambridge supporters, and you can see members of their blue boats actually down there supporting and watching and getting to enjoy this moment for the whole squad. And as we say, it's not just the 8 people rowing, it's the people that missed out on the crew that pushed that crew to be as good as they were today. It's a team effort, and a lot goes into it, and a lot of support, and this moment is great for everybody.
Well, the beginning of the celebrations in the Cambridge camp that will continue certainly for the rest of the day, and I suspect for a little way beyond. And somehow the guy holding the boat in the water has got hold of a bottle of champagne. I didn't know how that happened. That's good planning. Last time I went into the bar at Quintin, all I could get was a pint of bitter. So, times change.
Yeah, they must come pre-organised with the champagne. And I was just noting it's a very early finish. It's only midday, so I'm sure these athletes have a big day of celebrating ahead of them. And I hope they pace themselves well and enjoy the day. But yeah, it's an early time to be finishing your race and getting into the champagne.
Yeah, the sun's nowhere near the yard arm, is it? So
No. It might be an early to bed night.
So I think that Mark Davis has managed to catch up with the winning Cambridge crew. So over to you, Mark.
Well, let's get a view of that clash at the start from the Cambridge Cox. Tasia, congratulations to your crew, but talk us through that first 2 minutes.
I think it started off both crews really close, so I think the guys just did a good job handling themselves under pressure, and we just went through our normal start sequence, and obviously you can expect some clashes here and there, so I think they did a great job just holding onto their blades. Yeah.
But going off the start, you started very close to each other. You steered away, and then you steered back in, and then away again and back in. So when the clash happened, that Oxford have since appealed, what was going through your mind?
Well, really, I think we were more holding our station, and both boats were starting pretty close together, so I think it was kind of bound to have some tight blades at the beginning, so it was more of just holding our station and kind of getting the best water there. Yeah.
And then you went into their water from quite early. You must have had confidence that your crew was going to row away to do that as early as you did.
They rowed very well too, but yeah, I trust the guys to have a good start. I think we've been doing well off the start, so I think I was feeling pretty good off those first few strokes, but props to both crews, for getting off the line.
And to what extent did you know what the gap was between you and the Oxford crew?
I was able to look back, but it's hard to calculate at a certain point, but I kept my eye over my shoulder a bit to see that we were clear. Yeah.
Was there ever a point during the course of the race where you thought to yourself, we had that clash, they're going to appeal it?
No. Sometimes you get an appeal at the end, but I was trying just more think about executing our race plan and think a little bit less about what was going to happen at the end.
Well done. You steer your crew to a comfortable victory. Let's go to Lewis next. Lewis, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
You were stroking that crew on bow side, so it was your blade that was going to get in, was in the firing line effectively.
Yes.
It must have been pretty difficult to keep a rhythm while also being aware of the fact that you were very close to each other.
Yeah, well, I had full trust in the crew, so those clashes we've practiced, we've had lots of fixtures where it's been close. I had full sort of trust with the guys behind me that are going to help sort of get us through and get away from there. So for me it was just make sure I hold on to the blade and win that clash and get back on the rhythm. So.
But you're gripping the blade that much tighter, and in the fear that it might get knocked out of your hand, it's difficult to keep a loose strokes rhythm at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's just having a bit of awareness. It's sort of in the back of your mind rather than sort of tensing up too much. I mean, we've got to stick to our plan, and the quickest way out of there is definitely by sort of staying loose and long. So that's more what we focused on.
And you got open water very early in the race.
Yeah.
From there, what was in your head?
Yeah, I mean, just give it to them. We've been training for this all year. We wanted a sort of real good go at it. I mean, full credit to them off the start. They got it close, but after that, it was sort of shut the door for us and get off and get to the finish.
Well done. You did a terrific job.
Thank you very much.
Ben.
Hi.
Sorry. Harry. So talk me through the race from your perspective.
Yeah, I think we got off to a good start, and then once we were moving away, we just kept on putting it down. I think everyone in there did everything they can to just see what we could do, see how fast we could get down the course, and I'm really proud of everyone for all the work that's gone in this year. And yeah, it was a great road.
Were you conscious of how close the boats were at the start?
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely sense the blades there, but I had full trust in Tasia to know what she was doing and to keep us in the right position, and just get us down in one piece, and we did. Yeah.
Well done. So that's two. Pass the microphones along. So that's 2 wins in a row for Cambridge men, and 3-2 to Oxford in terms of tideway results for the lightweights. So what are your thoughts?
I think it's excellent results today. I think we just trust the pattern, trust the boys, trust the excellent coaching we've had. Really thankful for the coaches and all the supporters. But I think it's just pressing on now. Next year, and the years on, anyone carrying on and anyone looks to join us. I think just really building on the success we've had the last 2 years, and really pressing on, seeing how many wins we can come out on the tideway with.
Yeah, please. Let's go along the line. As you were moving away down the course, what goes through your mind as the distance grows?
Well, by the time we were one length away, it almost felt like Coxwood were holding on, so we only knew one thing to do, and that was to push on further. We were probably by Hammersmith a good few lengths up, and we felt more confident from that. So it felt really good going around.
And what about as you come to the finish? Obviously, you didn't know at that point the result was in the bag. You'd have seen the Oxford Cox's hand go up. The appeal was made. What do you think in that minute or so that the umpire and the Oxford crew are in debate?
So of course there was a bit of apprehension to what the result would actually be. We were obviously happy to be so far ahead at the finish, but of course until the official result is declared, we don't know for sure. It left us with 2 moments of joy. Second time obviously greater because it was actually official.
Well, you all did a tremendous job. Let's move on down the line. Let's go back to that opening minute and a half or so, because the Cambridge boat was moving side to side on the water. There was a lot of rudder. Cox was actually almost leaning with the boat as the turns came in. What did that feel like inside the boat?
Yeah, I think it's just there's inevitably going to be bad strokes in those moments when you're clashing and stuff and swerving around. It's just don't let the bad ones knock you off your rhythm. Get the blade in the water every single time you can, and just keep on pushing to get to clear water, and then keep going away, really.
And what about before the start? Let's go along the line. What about before the start? Because obviously there was the delay. You've done your warm-up, you're ready to go, and all of a sudden the talk is that there's a boat on the course, and you've got to turn around and do it again. What happens then?
I saw a couple of boats coming through, so it's just stuff we're ready for. We've had that kind of happen during the fixtures, and in the fixtures we've all been warming up that end of the course as well. So these things happen. It's not a river closure, so you've just got to be ready for every eventuality. Just gave us a bit of time to do a couple more loops, just get more settled into the boat, and I think it really benefited us as well. It was just you just can't let these things knock you off when you're a racing crew. So you just got to stay steady in the head.
You kept perfectly relaxed.
Just about, yeah.
So at what point did you think the race was over?
I mean, I never really thought it was. At any point something could go horrifically wrong, and so just every stroke I was just thinking, how much more can we grow the margin? How much more secure can we get it? Only point I was really confident was when Matthew raised his flag at the end. That's the only point I was content that we had won.
I'm not sure what the verdict was in the end, but obviously you were moving away from the moment of the clash. You moved from then. The rhythm in the boat obviously carrying you along.
Yeah, so that's something we've been really working on the past few weeks. Just we know when we get the rhythm right, we move so much more together, so much more effectively, and so we've just been wanting to really work on the rhythm, get it really nailed down, and that really paid off today.
Well done. So that's 2 wins today for Cambridge, the women's lightweights and the men's lightweights. Should we be taking any indicators from this into the boat races on Sunday?
Well, obviously we do the same training as the heavyweights, but then the Oxford heavyweights don't do the same training as the lightweights, so we don't know what's going to happen from this. They are 2 different squads, but hopefully it's a Cambridge win.
And what are you going to be doing between now and then, other obviously than celebrating today's result?
Eating and relaxing after the win.
Well done all of you. It was an absolutely comprehensive victory. Very impressive performance. Well done. Cambridge lightweights. We'll see if we can get a word with the Oxford crew. Here they come to congratulate the Cambridge crew. Handshakes all round, despite the fact that there is some debate in the Oxford crew as to whether there should have been a disqualification. Let's ask Rollo Orme, who is the cox of the Oxford lightweights. Talk us through, you appealed that at the end. You obviously felt that the clash off the start in that opening minute or so had a significant impact on the rhythm of the Oxford boat. Talk us through it as you saw it.
Yeah, I think the opening minute, 2 minutes in a race is really, really important. It's obviously where you're going to go and hit your rhythm, your base rhythm for the race, and if something's affecting you getting into that, then it can have quite a big impact on the race. So yeah, that was my view. I thought it affected our ability to get into our rhythm, which we've been working on in training. Yeah, that's why I appealed that.
And what was the nature of the appeal? Did you say that we were in our water and they were coming towards us? I heard Matthew Holland say that it was in neutral water.
Yeah, so I felt that the clash occurred after Cambridge had been warned. Continuous warnings from Matt Holland. And I thought, therefore, it must have occurred in our water. But yeah, if it's in neutral water, then both coxes are equally liable, and therefore there won't be a decision made on that.
At the time that it happened, did it go through your mind to appeal there and then?
Yeah, I mean, they always say, keep going, appeal at the end of the race, but whatever you do, keep going. If you stop and they say nothing's doing, then obviously that's not the best outcome.
But you didn't necessarily need to stop your crew. You could have flagged during the race that you felt that was a crucial moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. When you're in the race, you're pretty locked in. As I say, first minute's pretty important. You want to be pretty switched on. So I was mostly focused on trying to get my crew back together after the clash, and as I say, trying to get us back onto rhythm. And that was my main focus at that time.
And having had that conversation with Matthew Holland, the umpire, at the end, what are your feelings now?
Look, I think Cambridge did a great race. They did a great race, and they've come away winners and deservedly so. Both crews put in so many hours training throughout the year that whoever wins, it's not going to be undeserved. So absolutely congratulations to them. You always want it to be a clean race and be able to feel like you put absolutely everything into it. And maybe it's a little bit marred this year, but at the end of the day, they put in a great race and they were faster on the day and they managed to win. And congratulations to them for that.
Well, for what it's worth, speaking as a cox, I thought you held your line very impressively off the start in the face of some very difficult steering conditions.
Thank you.
Let's talk to Aggie. Where is he? Aggie, this is your 5th boat race, and I think we should at least put on record that you now hold the record for the most caps as an Oxford University lightweight.
Yes.
That aside, today obviously didn't go as you would have hoped.
Well, every boat race is kind of special, and every boat race is unique, and I can't say that I regretted any of them. Wins and losses, it's always about the people you meet along the way and the journey all the way through, and I think I couldn't have asked for a better set of lads. In my 5 years, I've seen the highs and lows, and these are a great bunch of athletes, and I think looking forward, we've got some good things in our future.
Is that it for you now? Do you graduate this year?
I graduate next year.
You graduate next year. Would you be back for another one?
I'm a PhD student, so let's see what my supervisor says.
Right, but you've got 3 wins, 2 losses, played 5, won 3, lost 2.
Well, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what Bucks holds for us.
Let me move on to one of your crewmates and just ask: at the start, obviously the race was delayed. You'd all done your warm up. You were all ready to come down to the start, and then all of a sudden there's news that there is a cruiser on the course. What did that do to the crew?
I have to say, I don't think anything at all. I think we were really, really well drilled for our race warm-up and our start. We spent the past few weeks, months, just drilling every single session, doing our race warm-up, practicing our start. And so because we've been doing it for so long, we've practiced in all kinds of conditions and things going well and things going wrong as well. So I think like through doing that, we built up a level of just trust and rhythm in the crew and togetherness that it's okay. I feel like we'd dealt with similar things and worse at home in Wallingford. So yeah, I would say I'm just very proud of the way we all held together and executed our race plan and delivered on the training we had been doing. So yeah.
Now I didn't see whose blade it was amongst you that actually clashed. Who took the brunt of the clash? Right. Well, so let's have a word with one of you, because from your perspective, what did it do to your, as you were going along? The clash happened, stroke side blades clashed, and what did you feel at that point?
Hold on tight, just brace and hold and try and keep rowing as well as I can, really.
And as the call, Cambridge moved away towards the end of the line of boats, and it looked at one point as if you might be thinking, right, we've got to put our foot down here, because if we hit them at this point, then that would definitely be a foul. Was there a feeling of that in the crew? I'm sure that was going through your mind, Rollo, but did the crew feel that as well?
I don't think you ever want to aim for a foul. You want to beat them, right? So they were moving away, and we needed to put our foot down to move back. We tried, we didn't quite make it back, but no, I wouldn't. You never want to try and foul another crew, do you? Or force them into a foul.
Well, you put in a valiant row following that controversy at the start, so well done. Result
Cheers.
Obviously didn't go your way, but thank you all very much for taking the time to come and talk. That's the Oxford lightweights after a fairly difficult defeat at the hands of the Cambridge lightweights. That's 3-2 though to Oxford on the Tideway in the 5 years that the lightweight race has taken place here, and we'll have to see what happens next year, whether Cambridge can draw level again. But well done all of you. Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you so much.
And Robert, it's back to you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thanks very much, Mark. And so a disconsolate Oxford crew after a little bit of controversy, and we can see that start that developed into that protest here. So when Matthew Holland got the crews underway, they were pointing away from each other, as we can see, but Cambridge rapidly had to correct their course to come back on terms. The two crews came together, and this is where the umpire determined that the clash occurred in so-called neutral water, and that means that it was neither crew's lane, and this was the point that the umpire was making, and the umpire, which is what the Oxford Cox Rollo Orme was disputing, because he felt that the clash occurred in their water and that Cambridge had in effect fouled them. So the umpire's decision stands, and we can see that despite Oxford at this very early stage trying to force an error here, Grace, because they really were pumping it in, trying to come up on the stern of the leading Cambridge crew and once again force a foul, weren't they?
Yeah, it was a lot to deal with in the first couple of minutes of this race, and you could see how quickly the Cambridge coxswain was steering, and obviously at the very initial point was heading off to the bow side and then made a quick turn back in, and the Oxford crew visually looked like they kind of held their line a bit more, but it was deemed to be in neutral water, and that's when it comes down to the umpire's call, and both crews were just fighting to be in the fastest water. But then once they were able to come onto rhythm, you could just see the Cambridge crew just stretched out the lead inch by inch every single stroke and just had that faster race speed, and then went on to a very, very dominant victory, and I think were the faster crew on the day. but the start was tough, and it was a messy way to get through the first couple of minutes.
And it unsettles a crew, doesn't it? The crew that comes worst out of an encounter like that. It discourages them for the and unsettles them for the rest of the encounter. So, Cambridge across the line, and massive celebrations, which were delayed a little because of that Oxford protest. But you can see victory waves there from the 2 and 3 men, the two Sams, Taylor and Clark, in the 2 and 3 seats of the Cambridge crew, and victory confirmed there for Cambridge. So a double win here in the lightweight boat races 2023. So your impressions of the day then, Grace?
I think some very dominant performances from the Cambridge crew. They both looked confident and like they thought they were going to go out and win these races. I was very impressed with how the Oxford crew spoke after both of their races. They seemed to really treasure the race regardless of the outcome, and they realise how important it is just to get to the start line and enjoy that moment even if they're disappointed. But yeah, good day on the water for Cambridge, and I think they'll obviously leave feeling very happy, and there'll be some disappointed athletes on the Oxford crew, but just that base speed that the Cambridge crews had them able to just get onto a rhythm and push and push and push and not leave it to a sprint to the line.
Yes, and for me, well, I thought it was amazing how the Oxford lightweight women had come back after last year's defeat to put in a degree of increasing competence. They'd really got their act together, so many of them coming back into the crew. Okay, they were on the losing side again, but who knows? Speaking to those athletes, hopefully many of them will come back for another stab at the attempt in next year's races. So a great morning of sporting activity here on the championship course between Putney and Mortlake. To the victors go the spoils, and the trophies will be presented at London Rowing Club at 2 o'clock. For all those of you who are local spectators here on Putney Embankment, you'll be very welcome to witness that. But from our broadcast here, on behalf of my colleagues Mark Davis and Grace Prendergast and myself, Robert Trahan-Jones, bye-bye for now.
Investing just got better with Interactive Investor. In a world that costs more, you can now invest with us for less than $5 a month. Investor Essentials is our newest and lowest monthly subscription. For a flat fee of $4.99, you get an ISA, trading account, and access to more than 40,000 UK and international investments. And you can do it all on the go with our mobile app or on our website. We're already home to more than 400,000 investors. So why not join them and say hello to better investing with Interactive Investor?